Hello again, friends, and you are our friends, unless you write WWE television. And welcome back to another episode of Jim Cornette's Drive Thru. A day later than usual. We're recording it a little later in the day than usual, all because we had to watch the Survivor Series, which I barely survived. We'll find out what Mr. Cornette thought of it, but we're also going to get to your questions, as well as something a lot of people have been waiting for, a big watch-along. Starrcade 85, Thanksgiving 85, Magnum T.A. versus Tully Blanchard in a cage, I Quit match. A very memorable match that we're going to get to. But first, let me introduce the leader of the Cult of Cornette, the exalted one of the Cult of Cornette, Mr. Jim Cornette.
Brian, last you did what I thought might be impossible to do. You made me laugh right off the bat. No, the people on the writing staff, whoever they may be, those nameless, faceless, soulless, thankless, I can't thank them any less, people on the writing staff of the WWE are not our friends. Bad writers. But you made me laugh. I'm tired and grumpy and hungry. That's the way we started the last program that we did.
That is.
Because once again, we are after dark, not only because we took time out of our lives that we will never recover to play with our dogs and our children and plan our own funerals, anything else, to watch the Survivor Series. We'll never recover that time, but also another delay here at the castle. I've mentioned on the experience, if you people are keeping up, if you're listening out of order, shame on you, bad followers. I mentioned on the experience that the Monroe brothers, my handymen and carpenters, the Monroe brothers, Alf and Ralph.
Sputnik and Rocket.
Well, actually, the Alf and Ralph are the Sputnik and Rocket would be goddamn 90 years old now. I wouldn't have them doing carpentry. But anyway, the Monroe brothers. There
was Flash Monroe, too.
And also, but here's the thing, Bubba Monroe, Sputnik's son, used to drive Jerry Jarrett's limousine, as you'll recall, in Memphis. Nevertheless, I digress. So the Monroe brothers been here doing my deck, and more things were rotten in the castle, not in Denmark, but in the castle than we suspected they were, and they had to do more things. So it stretched into another day, and we got hit by the weather also, so that put us back a day. So we had to wait until the banging and the pounding and the clanging ceased over here before we recorded this program. So, but I got up at 5:45 this morning, and I was at the post office bright and early, and shipped another wide variety of packages to the Cornette's Collectibles customers. And I got an update, and this is not even a commercial announcement. This is a public service announcement, Brian. Let me go into this right here at the start. This is public service, not even related to business of mine. The local news, ladies and gentlemen, in the United States of America, the local news is lying to you. I just saw here on my local news that they said that if you want to have a package or a letter or whatever get there by Christmas, the first class mailing deadline is December 18th, and the priority mail deadline is December 19th. But my sources, my people who are in the ground, boots on the ground in the Postal Service, call bullshit on that. Falderall, they say. Shenanigans, they call. If you want to make sure this season, with all the other things that have gone on, that you get it, that you mail something and somebody gets it before Christmas, if it's first class mail, do it by the 15th or the 16th. And if it's priority, do it by the 17th. You might be lucky and you might be at a good place, or it might be a short trip and it gets there a couple of days early. What's the harm there? But don't lull yourselves into a false sense of security. So take that advice. If the local news is telling you these things, I'm tipping you off here because I've got the inside scoop. You know, Washington keeping an eye on me over there at the post office. We've talked about that. They know when I'm there. They know when I've been bad or good. And speaking of which, I won't even sell my products at this point at JimCornette.com. They're selling themselves. I'm trying to keep up. Things are looking good, but I just gave you a mailing deadline, folks. And remember my turnaround time. I'm only one man. You got to give me 3, 4, 5 days from the time I get it till the time I can get it out, especially this time of year. The I Love Lucy conveyor belt is speeding up. And the chocolates are coming quicker and quicker. So I don't want to have to stuff any of your orders down into my bosom or chew on them or whatever. So please, if you're going to order anything from JimCornette.com and you want it by Christmas, if you don't get the order in by December, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, I'm pleading with you. Especially because I'd like to have this matter settled for the holidays. So,
are you going to close down again?
Well, that's coming up, but not until January 1st. January 1st, we're going to be closing down. We're going to be taking a break after the holiday rush so that everybody's gotten their ill-gotten merchandise that they've purchased, and then we're going to take a break, and more on that in the next week or two. Anyway, order by December, maybe December 7th. A date which will live in infamy can be used as a source of good. Maybe that could be my deadline. If you want it by Christmas for real. And by the way, that's in the United States, folks. Internationally, I'm filling them. But I don't know, sometimes it's a week or two and sometimes it's a month or two, as we've been saying all year. So you may already be, as Mama Cornette used to say, up shit creek without a paddle. But get it in if you ain't already got it in. That's what she said. But anyway, that's but here's what we're doing tonight. After we finish recording this program, the dinner is already in the house. We're having a big blowout at my suggestion. Obviously, with all of this sloppy food I'm about to tell you about, but we're having pizza and burgoo. Hometown pizza from right here in Louisville, Kentucky. They got multiple locations all around the metro area. Hometown pizza and burgoo from Mark's Feed Store. And we're having real pizza, not that kind of phony pizza that they have up there where you're living at and you're exposed to. We each picked our own. I got the Joe's Special, which of course is pepperoni, pork, ham, sausage, and bacon with cheese, obviously. Thin crust. I'm watching my carbs. And Stacy got the delicious white chicken, which is grilled chicken, bacon, red onion, spinach, cheese on an Alfredo sauce. They build pizza down here the way people are supposed to eat pizza. And then we got a big thing so we can have a cup of burgoo with a little Texas toast on the side. Holy man, that's what I'm going. That's the only thing keeping me going.
A little Texas toast. I'm glad you're watching your carbs.
Well, you got to have a little Texas toast with your burgoo, but only one piece because I got the pizza over there. It's just a side dish. But that's how I got through Survivor Series, listening to the Monroe brothers banging and clanging on the castle today. And now having to record with you, Brian Last, on your program. Not even the show that I am host of, but your program, After Dark here. Brian Last, After Dark.
That's right. I'm not even going to start a pizza debate with you just because it'll go on forever and we only have so much time. We're both hungry and cranky, although the idea that real pizza comes from Kentucky, not up here,
this is Louisville
where every reputable
pizza.
Goomba really lives, that's a little bit ridiculous. But let's talk about something we could both agree on, the Survivor Series.
All right, yeah.
And what I mean is we could both agree it sucks. But anyway, let's not prejudice the review beforehand. Let's talk about it.
Well, you told me that this was a big show. You said, because I said to you, what major events would the people enjoy us hearing us talk about, enjoy us watching and talking about, reviewing, critiquing, whatever. I titled this when I put on my pad here. At first, I wrote Survivor Series, and then I scratched that out and wrote the title of the show that they should have given. I thought this was supposed to be a Big Show series because the only stars that I actually saw, except for a couple of exceptions that we will notate. The only stars I saw walked to the ring in street clothes, most of them, and were introduced to the Undertaker tribute and then disappeared. So
that is one of their big shows. This, unfortunately, is one of their big shows, and unfortunately, there is a lack of star power in the WWE. A lot of it, you don't get the true feeling of things without the fans there, but a lot of it is you really just see the problems inherent with this creative team led by Vince McMahon. We'll have more about Vince later on. And then, of course, you hit on the Undertaker's retirement ceremony. I don't know if that's what we call it or not. We'll talk about that later on, too, but that was another interesting spectacle. But we, of course, started with some wrestling matches.
We did?
The Survivor Series, if you remember, it began as...
Not the one I was watching.
Teams of 5 strive to survive. That was the original motto for it.
Oh. How about... No, I can't even say. If they'd have moved it down to 4, I would have said teams of 4 that made my ass sore. Well, you know what? That didn't sound right. Maybe, holy mackerel, Jason Nebuchadnezzar may have had to take that one out. All right. You've hit on one thing, though, about the Survivor Series, the way that it was initially formulated, is at least it was a team of baby faces against a team of heels. It wasn't a team of a bunch of people who were on one of the syndicated programs versus a team of people who was on one of the other syndicated programs. They didn't have 2 brands back then, which is possibly why they had more stars. So the whole thing, Team Raw, and good God, do they all have to wear? Did you notice only the biggest star on each team got away without wearing the fucking goofy T-shirt? Keith Lee didn't have to wear it, and I think AJ didn't have to wear it. He had, but the ones that weren't, and Seth Rollins weren't wearing it, but they had red and black or blue tights on at least. But it just looked like a bunch of guys in a fucking pickup ball game, didn't it to you? Especially Riddle. When he came out, I'm the former Matt, now Riddle. He came out in that T-shirt and his spandex trunks and barefoot. It looked like he'd just been picked up at the public swimming pool. Keith Lee had better gear.
Well, it still wasn't good. I have to say.
It wasn't a tennis skirt.
It wasn't a tennis skirt, but still him wearing the top isn't flattering. It looks better just him wearing trunks like he did in NXT. He doesn't look intimidating wearing the singlet.
I don't know, but anyway, in case we haven't actually said this match, the opening match of this fiasco was Team Raw against Team SmackDown. It was AJ Styles, who claimed to be the captain. Nobody else agreed with him. And what's his bodyguard's name? God, is he big? I've stumped you now. No, well, that's another thing, is they referred to him at the beginning and then didn't beat you up with what the guy's name was.
Well, here's another problem.
If I had a motherfucker that looked like that on my television, I would be seeing a lot of him and hearing people talk about him a lot.
The other problem is, maybe they did say it, but the commentary is so awful. All up and down this show that I tuned them out. I watched a lot of this on mute. I just couldn't do it. Awful. Michael Cole is... They have an expression up here. I don't know if they have it down in the South. Dog shit on the microphone. And he ruins every broadcast he's a part of. He speaks in such a disingenuous fashion. We've said it before. They talk to you like you're a child, like you're a slow child. It's so bad. The commentary is so bad, and it makes it impossible to get into stuff. And that's the problem I had. That's why I miss a lot of things that they say, because I can't listen to them anymore. So I watched a lot of this show on mute.
Well, and I didn't mute it, but I do tune it out. And part of the reason why I'm probably easier on the commentators even than you are. But part of the reason why I just zone out all the audio is because now they've just gone just slap happy like a junkie with his fucking finger on the clicker on the morphine drip on the fake crowd noise. And it comes in and goes up and down at some point. So I just orally, Aurally, I zone out on it anyway. I'm watching what's going on, unfortunately. But anyway, it was Team Raw against Team SmackDown, and I get it. I should reveal this match like I saw it, because this was like, it was like a wink from a pretty woman, and then suddenly she turns around and you see she's looking at somebody else. They teased me for a second, and then they took it right away. You've got AJ Styles with this big giant fucking bodyguard. Did we ever see him interact in any way in this match ever again?
No, I was waiting for something.
Okay. So AJ Styles and a big bodyguard. Riddle, at least he's been figured into some shit. We know who he is. Keith Lee, we've said, is a future superstar, even if one of the most polite and well-mannered superstars. Braun Strowman, well, they use him well. We don't get that big of a thrill out of him, but he's a big fucking deal. And Sheamus, who I wrote, is he still around? Billy, okay, here's some fucking names, and then out comes Team SmackDown. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, fuck, this is the fucking Job Squad. Al Snow would be Jey Uso. And I'm not knocking any of these people as talents, but as how they've been presented. Maybe the last one I mentioned I may knock as a talent, but the way they've been presented, or the way they look, or their track record next to what we've just seen come in. Into the here comes the competition. Jey Uso, Kevin Owens, Otis, Seth Rollins, and the Possum King, Baron Corbin.
I didn't know when you said you're going to knock the last one. I was thinking it would be Otis, not Baron Corbin.
Well, I lied. I didn't say the only one I was going to knock was the last one. But the Possum fucking, as soon as he was the last one to come out, they had the Possum King, the Grand Marshal of the Possum Day Parade, enter after Seth Rollins. So, and then Team SmackDown they congregated on the floor. They weren't even allowed to get in the ring until all five of them were together. They weren't even intimidating enough that these stars that got in the ring, or that were already in the ring, would get out and give them their moment of entrance. And besides the atmosphere giving me a fucking headache, with the wall of fan mug shots so tiny and constantly moving, and the saturation of blue lights everywhere in this Thunderdome, hurt my head to watch anything.
How about the fake crowd noise? I mean, I understand pumping in some noise, but all throughout the show, it's so fake. Fake chanting? I mean, they're chanting for people. There's no one there.
Yes.
That's how The Undertaker leaves the main stage. Just a fake wall of noise. It's ridiculous. But anyway, sorry.
Well, no, this match, I've just random notes. Because it's an elimination match, and guys do things to each other over and over. But random notes. The best worker in the match thinks the earth is flat. The second best worker in the match is mad at me because I said that his wife picked an expensive time to get pregnant.
Is he madder at you or madder at Riddle?
What did Riddle do to his wife?
Apparently,
have I missed something?
Well, I saw a bunch of people sent me a screen cap on Twitter that when Riddle was in that corner doing something, Seth wouldn't even make eye contact with him. And they said that apparently at some point, either Riddle or his wife, I don't even know, it may have been Riddle, made some comments about Becky Lynch a while back on social media about her physique.
Uh-oh.
And Seth Rollins doesn't ever want to work with the guy or be around the guy, and here they are in the same match. So at one point, he was in that corner, and Seth Rollins wouldn't even look at him.
I wish I would have had something against the people in this match to not look at it. No, not everybody was bad. I will compliment my favorite personality in this match, Kevin Owens. Every time he was when he got in and started working Riddle's ankle, I actually woke up for a second. He was doing something different, and he looked like he had some enthusiasm for it. Every time that Kevin Owens got in this match, he did something. Later on, he gave AJ Styles a big backdrop and did the Stunner series, and then he got beat. But every time he was allowed to get in, he did something to wake people up and just pick the fucking level of excitement in this dreariness up just a bit. So he was my favorite. But explain to me, suddenly, out of nowhere, very early in the match, maybe because of his choice of partners, Seth Rollins stops the match. It says it for the greater good to his partners, I guess, gets on his knees and lets Sheamus kick him in the face and pin him. Did the announcers ever explain what the fuck that was all about?
Well, again, I couldn't really pay much attention to the announcers because I
was trying to listen at that point, and I don't. They said what he was doing, but they didn't, to my knowledge, go into any detail on why he fucking did it. I didn't catch that.
I think the Monday Night Messiah is kind of like a benevolent Brody Lee.
So just recapping, Seth Rollins stops the match, tells his team it's for the greater good. We heard that. Then just lets the guy from the other team kick him and knock him out and pin him. So now Raw is ahead 5-4. And then Team Raw got down on the floor and kind of like blew him off. Well, we always knew he was a prick. And they're huddled up. So now the job-looking team in anybody's eyes is down a member. They're huddled up on the floor, and Strowman runs over and just fucking body blocks all of them. And then Strowman's yelling at his teammates because it's still babyface and heels from the same one show versus babyface and heels from the other show. Somehow in the middle of this, Keith Lee was working competitively with Otis. Fucking Otis. And I know this kid, I guess, is a shooter in his real life, as a term that was used later on. And could probably stretch everybody, but he's presented as a fucking undercard simpleton, despite the fact that they've tried to nobody wants to see this fucking goofy gimmick. And there's Keith Lee, who they haven't fucked up completely yet and has a chance to be a star, and is working competitively with Otis. So then, who was next? Then Owens gets beat. Now it's 5-3. And then Riddle beats Corbin and it's 5-2. And I'm like, is Vince now convinced that SmackDown is WCW and that's what he's taking his frustration out on? Or who has heat here? Why is SmackDown of an ineffectual team of feckless, limp-dicked, undercard simpletons?
I don't know.
Well, thank you for mulling it over and giving me your best and most incisive opinion. So then fucking Riddle and Jey Uso had an exchange at that point that was either a complete shoot or the sloppiest bunch of work I've ever seen. I don't know what the fuck was going on there. Riddle's awkward as fuck anyway. But in a single match, I've noticed, especially with obviously somebody that's a little bit more experienced, they can do his shit and get his shit over. But if he's in there with just a variety of people and everybody's and a lot of this shit's just happening, he's awkward as fuck. Just to note that. Everybody took bumps for Otis. And then Braun Strowman power slammed him and beat him. So there's Jey Uso by himself. And of course, he had to do a dive on everybody. You would think people would stop. There should be in wrestling now, because of the pandemic of dives, there should be social distancing on the floor. If you take a bump on the floor, you're not allowed to be within 8 feet of anybody else, or because if that happens, somebody's going to dive on you. So there should be social distancing on the floor. But he dove on everybody and did the best, and finally Keith Lee catches him and power bombs him 1, 2, 3. 5-zip. Thanks for coming, SmackDown. What the fuck was that all about? It's actually a network television show. Shouldn't SmackDown be a priority over Raw if they were going to treat them unequally? Shouldn't the Fox network and broadcast network television trump, no pun intended, cable? Or shouldn't it at least be, hey, Fox, fuck you. Your team got wiped. They got skunked. What do you think about that? Why would you do that? What is the storyline purpose for doing this?
I don't know, because I don't watch their weekly television shows. It didn't seem to make too much sense to me. Again, I wasn't listening to the awful commentary because they suck and they make me want to turn off my TV. So I don't know. Knowing Vince, it could be something as simple as we don't like Fox, this will show them. But
I mean, I know that they wanted it figured in that Jey Uso was the last one, but yet, he let Roman Reigns down, so he had to prove himself. I get that, but that doesn't mean that I'm not saying they should have put SmackDown over. I'm saying that maybe it should have been a little more competitive, and they could have still done the same thing with Jey Uso being last.
I've noticed, this is now a few times this has happened, where one match into a WWE pay-per-view event, I start thinking, maybe AEW isn't that bad.
Well,
it takes one match, and I'll be honest, I think a large part of it is, even with Excalibur there, the commentary is nowhere near as bad as this. And that affects the whole show. I know you're saying, you're focusing on the commentary. It affects the whole show. Jim Ross doesn't talk to me like I'm a child.
Yeah.
Even in his grouchiest of moments, he's a real guy. Shivani, he's a real guy. Excalibur, look, take off the mask. He's the same doofus he would be in a basement calling these matches.
He's a doofus in the basement, but he's not talking to you he's talking to you like you're 23 in the basement instead of 6.
And he tends to say the stupidest stuff of anyone on that team. But the WWE commentator, the whole presentation, I said this to someone earlier, the presentation, from the camera cuts to the commentators to the lighting, it's not enjoyable to me at all. It took one match of this show for me to go, I don't know how much longer I could do this tonight. I may have to just wait till tomorrow and suffer again. But it's really, really bad. Someone's going to say, oh, you're doing it too much. There's good stuff on the show too. It's a really shitty presentation for professional wrestling.
You know what may change your perception? I'm thinking this because you just have this irrational hatred of Michael Cole. A man who...
Irrational? You mean rational?
This irrational hatred of Michael Cole, a man who actually went overseas in war and served as a correspondent and has finally honed his craft as a wrestling announcer over the past 20 years as a personal protege of Kevin Dunn himself. And you have this irrational hate, and it is clouding your judgment of these programs.
It's rational hatred, and he's still commentating like he's screaming over Scud missiles.
These bombs are loud and fucking flatulent that they're dropping these bombs in these matches that they're having, these stink bombs.
And about as effective as the Scud missile, actually, now that I think about it.
But I know what can change your perception, Brian. What you need to do is, before the next big event from the WWE, you need to sit down to watch that event, but instead of just turning the sound down, what you need to do is you need to put some soothing music onto your favorite set of Raycon wireless earbuds. And you can block Michael Cole out, and you can block his minions out. And you can block his bad habits out, and instead you can enjoy a nice musical soundtrack while you watch the physical ballet in front of you, because after all, if the wrestlers are doing a good job in the ring, they should be able to tell you their story through physicality. You shouldn't have to be listening to somebody tell you what's in front of your eyes. So the Raycon wireless earbuds would block all that out. And folks, whether it's wrestling commentators that you want to block out, your wife, your mother-in-law, the kids, any family members, people you work for, whoever you want to just give a figurative middle finger to and block them out of your world and listen to something else while you go about your daily life, the Raycon wireless earbuds are for you. With seamless Bluetooth pairing, a comfortable noise-isolating fit, you can listen for hours. The audio quality is amazing, comparable to what you get from the other premium brands, but Raycon start at half the price. So you're getting the same thing for much less money. You can use them for phone calls if you have to speak to someone, or music, work, or play at home on the go. You're going to use them every day. You're going to never pull them out of your ears. Folks, and actually, then in that case, you will not be able to get earwigs. Raycon earbuds prevent earwigs because they're already in your ears, so they're keeping a nice fit there. And right now, if you go to buyraycon.com, that's BUYRAYCON, buyraycon.com/JCE, you'll get 20% off your Raycon order. But hurry, they're doing a limited time only on this bad boy. Buyraycon.com/JCE, 20% off the Raycon wireless earbuds that can block Brian Last, Michael Cole from your life.
Next time we have to watch one of these events, I'm going to do that. I'm going to put my Raycon earbuds in my ear. I'm going to listen to Jimmy Smith, the sermon. That always puts me in a good mood. I'll see how that works with the craptacular WWE pay-per-view.
Actually, wait a minute. Do this. Put like Lance Russell calling something.
That's going to throw me off if he's calling one thing and I'm watching another thing.
You know what Lance used to do on the hotline?
He used to make up the house shows he was calling, didn't he?
For the new listeners, I've told this story before, but for the new folks out there, real briefly, the 1-900 WCW hotline in like the early 90s, they had a feature where if you picked option 7, you could listen in on someone announcing a live house show event. And I don't know why, but some people would do it, right, back then in those days, before the internet and everything. So they would send Lance Russell on the road to record a bunch of these, but then when he started seeing these shows, every card was the same, and he's calling the same matches, but in different places. And he said, well, that's going to expose the business. So what he would do is he would sit at ringside, and he would use the sound from the ring and the bumps, but he would call a whole different match. He would either call the guys that were in the match and make up that they were having an entirely different match, or he would just use the guys in the match taking the bumps and make other guys call other guys having the match using those bump sounds. And he had done it for so many years he could fucking do that. And how you going to tell? So there you go. Anyway.
I wish there were tapes of that.
I wonder if there are. Who knows? Maybe Dennis Brent, if anybody.
That's who I was thinking too. Yeah.
Dennis or Lynn, if you're listening, that would be classic if those tapes still exist. Anyway, here's something I hope they burn the tape of. Here's what came next. The New Day and the Street Profits. First of all, this was for what? Was this for one tag title or both tag titles, or somebody had one of the tag titles?
I think it was the two champions non-title.
Or okay, well, there you go. There are a lot of belts. Everybody's got a title here. 2 heavyweight champions, 2 tag team champions, 2 women's champion, women's tag team champion, U.S. champion, intercontinental champion. New Day came out dressed as spacemen from a video game and then transitioned to footage of them in the video game. And then they go to the Street Profits interview in the backstage area where one guy started repeating over and over, turn me up, turn me up. So I turned him down. It was starting to bother me. And then they yelled at each other in a playful fashion and sang a bunch of guys' theme songs. Until I just fast-forwarded this fucking nonsense. And then they all danced and sang their way to the ring to fight the video game characters. And this is what I wrote. This better grab me quick. Because I'm burning daylight here. New Day's gear looks like, as I've mentioned before, somebody ate a big bowl of Cheerios and then puked. The Street Profits, one guy's wearing a basketball uniform, one guy's got a Michael Jackson glove. Is Michael Jackson still, is that the Michael Jackson glove still a thing? 35 years after the fact, people accuse me of being out of touch.
I'm not sure how big a thing it is or isn't, but it's longer than 35 years at this point in time. Because he debuted the glove at what, Motown 25, didn't he?
Well, and that was 1983.
That's right.
Regardless.
Reunited with the Jacksons, including Randy, and then he insisted the stipulation for him playing the Berry Gordy tribute, Motown 25, was he had to do Billie Jean, which was released on CBS Records, a competitor.
And then moonwalked his way into our hearts.
That's right.
And so, can you talk about that anymore? So we have to go back to this match. But here's everything about this match was perfect, except there were no heels, there were no baby faces, just leapfrogs, dives, and flips. Was this? They talked about at the end the passing of the torch. Was this a grudge match? Was there an angle behind it? Why is this on pay-per-view? Was this a Raw match where they could have elevated these young men and passed the torch at a place where people would have actually seen it on national television rather than on a pay-per-view, because it was long. And I started playing with Harley Quinn because why not? Because it was just two teams in odd outfits leaping about and nobody to cheer for or particularly cheer against. And then finally the Street Profits, their finishing move, the super blockbuster off the doomsday device position. They beat Woods, so they beat New Day, who I like. I remember Woods from when he was Consequences Creed. He was a nice young man. Don't know the other two. I've never, this whole New Day thing with trumpets and pancakes and cereal and unicorns and rainbows, waterfalls, and lollipops and everything. Anyway, I don't fucking get it, and I never have. And the Street Profits, they ought to have a fucking death match with Private Party to see who gets this gimmick. But they put the right people over in this match as far as to elevate the young guys. So at least they still recognize that somewhat here. But what'd you think?
See, this is where I start separating from the WWE fans who really enjoyed this pay-per-view event, or at least liked it. I couldn't get into the match. I really don't like the New Day. I never have. I don't like the announcers talking to me like I'm children. I don't like grown men behaving like children on this show. Street Profits have shown potential. They've also been involved in some goofy... Who is it? Was it them against Otis and someone else, or was it them against a different team? No, it was them against the Viking Warriors, where they had that skit match where the ninjas showed up on bicycles.
Oh, God, yes. Yeah.
Which I was reminded of, because at one point during this match, Montez Ford, his facial expression was the same one he had at one of the goofy moments in that match. They're talented guys. I just wish there was something else to do with them. It was all right. I mean, I could just say it was all right. It wasn't the most offensive thing on the show. It wasn't the greatest thing I've seen. It was okay. That's it.
Well, it's all right. Well, it's all right. Have a good time.
Wow.
'Cause it's all right. Whoa, it's all right.
You have done Curtis Mayfield on a few shows recently. Impressions, actually, more accurately, was when he was still in the Impressions.
There you go, because then later on, Freddie's dead.
We're a winner. It's a great song.
Superfly.
Well, no, that was when he was a solo artist. We're a winner. Yes. He was still in the Impressions.
I was said later on. Then there. Anyway, if we're trying to talk about anything else, let's go back from Curtis Mayfield to Sami Zayn, from Superfly to El Generico. Sami Zayn versus Bobby Lashley. Sami Zayn is the Intercontinental Champion. Bobby Lashley is the United States Champion, or the other way around. No, yes, because Sami Zayn was mentioning that he's a champion of broader territory. Lashley's the babyface in this, but he had Shelton and MVP and Cedric with him, the whole Hurt business. So it's 4 against 1 against the mealy-mouthed chicken shit heel. A little Weasley fucking scrawny heel. But Zayn did the best he could with this. This kind of a Weasley heel getting his ass kicked needs fans there live to enjoy it. That's much of the enjoyment, the entertainment, of the energy that they feed off of. I don't know. As we've mentioned, we don't follow the build, but I don't know how they expected Zayn to have a ton of fucking heat anyway. Nobody's got a ton of heat anyway anymore. But he bailed and he powdered, and then Lashley would manhandle him some. Then he'd heel and get some heat on Lashley, and Lashley make a big comeback. And it started just going a little long. Zayn kept trying to bail, but Lashley wouldn't let him. And then at one point, Zayn shoved Lashley into a post and tried to untie the turnbuckle pad, but the babyface backup blocked him off and he got choke slammed. And finally, Lashley got him in the hurt lock. Nice nom de plume for the full Nelson. This was okay for what it was. There was a heel trying to be a heel and trying to have some kind of match to tell some kind of story that would at least be different than everything else everybody else was doing, not just moves, and also fit who his opponent was, the much bigger, stronger, fucking big beast of a shooter guy. Have they done things in the build up to this that Sami Zayn has so much heat that people were just salivating to see him get the shit kicked out of him and dismembered by Bobby Lashley? I don't know, and probably not. But this kind of the concept of this at one point would have worked on a big show, and people would have probably paid to see it. But it was what it was here. What do you think?
I can't really add too much to that. It was.
Well,
what
then
it was
let's
here.
Not try.
They said that Lashley was the CEO of the Hurt Business. Then what's MVP?
Well, I think he's stepped back now to President Emeritus, and he's got some kind of stock option plan. He's cashing in for his retirement. I don't know. I don't know why there's four of. They're being presented as baby faces when they look like they could be the most fearsome heel group on the planet, and why they're all four out there and Zayn's all by himself. Didn't Zayn have some stooges at one point?
Nakamura and Cesaro, I think it was.
Well, I know Nakamura then took the job with you and is editing for Arcadian Vanguard, but where's Cesaro?
That's Jace Nakamura.
That's what I said.
I actually don't know. I don't know where they are. It may say something about where they stand with Vince McMahon that they weren't included on this show, where it seems like just about anybody could be on this show.
Well, speaking of which, coming up next, well, what did you think of the women's match between Sasha Banks and Asuka?
I enjoyed it. I think it was, I'm thinking back now, and there'll be something I forget, but I think it was the second best thing on the show. The whole time I was watching it, I was saying to myself, Jim's going to hate this. Jim's going to fast forward. Jim's not going to like it. If Jim goes to me first with the review, that means he didn't watch it, and he fast forwarded. But I thought it was all right. I will say Suzanne walked in the office when that match came on, and she stopped because Sasha Banks' trunks, do you call them trunks on a girl? I guess. Her trunks, they were cut really low, like right in the front by the pubis. And Suzanne...
By the what?
Suzanne looked and she said...
Wait, back the fuck up. Pump the brakes. By the what?
The pubis.
The pubis?
The pubis area.
That's not a word. Did you say that? I've never heard that word, but pubic.
Hold on.
Pubis.
I just confirmed it. Pubis. Either a pair of bones forming the two sides of the pelvis. Either of a pair of bones forming the two sides of the pelvis. So, in fact, I was, in fact, correct. But...
Why didn't you just say crotch, though? We wouldn't have gone
because it's the girls' match. If it was one of the guys, I would have said crotch.
Girls have women are entitled to have crotches.
I've never heard a girl say, oh, my crotch.
If women want equality, then they should... I've heard a couple of girls say, oh, my crotch.
In Greenville, behind the dumpster? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, some other things in that area, too, that they've exclaimed about and commented upon.
Well, beyond this debate over the lexicon used, they were cut very low in the front. I don't remember them ever being that low before. Maybe I'm wrong. But beyond that, I thought it was all right. So like I said, second best thing on the show in terms of matches, not counting anything with a hologram.
Well, I didn't fast forward this because a Japanese schoolgirl was in it, since you have chastened me that not everyone is presented like Riho.
That's right. Asuka, there's nothing schoolgirlish about Asuka.
No, she's just very racially offensive with the screeching and yelling like the Godzilla movie soundtrack that they make her do on her promos. I think we've agreed.
She was never like that until she met Vince McMahon.
Vince McMahon. And now she screams like a... And I used the Godzilla soundtrack rule and the neither one of these girls is as tall as the top rope rule that regardless of how technically proficient they may be, I do not want to see two girls who have a combined height of less than 10 feet and a combined weight of less than 220 pounds have a wrestling match.
Hold on. How tall was Moolah?
She's about 5'6", 5'7", 5'8".
She was taller than the top rope. She's 5'8". Moolah was 5'8".
I'm just saying, around 5.5 feet tall, somewhere in that area.
How tall was Luna Vachon?
Around her.
How tall was Luna?
Tall enough to kick your ass.
She can kick all of our asses, but that's not the point.
Kick all of our asses, and she looked like it too. And I watched her matches.
Asuka's really good.
Yeah, well, Sasha won with a roll-up, so Asuka's a loser.
It's fake, Jim.
Hey, you watch your mouth.
It's the WWE. I can call it fake. I'm not talking about Jim Crockett Promotions. I'm talking about Vince McMahon Promotions.
Let me just explain this to you, Pally. If you expect me, and it should have been quicker too if they expected me to watch it.
It was a little long.
But the next thing, it was quick, but explain this to me. Why is Vince fixated on the gobbledygooker? Why? And Bruce used to bring that gobbledygooker up constantly.
And
what was
just
the
randomly?
noise he made? Gobbledygook, gobbledygook. He would do that to try to crack Vince up. Gobbledygook, or whatever the gook noise that they make.
Hold on. You never told me this before. In the middle of meetings?
Oh, just whenever we were sitting around at the fucking, at the house, trying to come up with some shit, and not in the middle of a goddamn proper meeting, but just sitting around or in the car or whatever. Gobbledygook, or what was it?
It was the gobbledygooker, yes.
Yes, but what noise did it make?
I don't remember it making any noises. It was Hector Guerrero popping out of an egg and dancing with Gene Okerlund.
He would make some gook noise. Gobbledygook, gobbledygook, whatever the fuck.
Funny enough, when he debuted at Survivor Series 90, they built up for it for like a month, 2 months, whatever, on the syndicated
Yeah, people
shows.
thought that was going to be the Undertaker,
They thought it was going to be Mean Mark popping out of the egg at the Survivor Series. Instead, it was Hector Guerrero dressed like a turkey. And poor Hector probably thought he had a job for life. Oh, Vince is giving me a gimmick. What's it going to be? You're going to be a turkey that dances with Gene Okerlund.
Well, anyway, I don't think this one was Hector, but the gobbledygooker was in the back earlier tonight, the graphic said, and won the 24/7 title from R-Truth, Ron Killings, I guess. Then the gobbledygooker finds a trail of birdseed and to a big pile of birdseed, and is grabbing the birdseed and throwing the goddamn birdseed in its face like it's eating the birdseed in this costume. And then Tozawa apparently comes and cradles him 1, 2, 3 and wins the title. But then here comes R-Truth and hits him with a bag of birdseed and wins it back. And this is all in a space of like about a minute or so.
And they said it was, what did they say, like the 45th time he's held the title?
It's something like that.
That is totally Vince McMahon. Like, all the midgets have to act like children. A man in a turkey outfit becomes a turkey. He sees bird feed and he just has to go for it. It's so bad. It's so stupid. I don't know who these segments are for other than Vince McMahon.
Well, I decided to institute a brand new rule. The Gooker rule. Anytime the gobbledygooker appears, what now? You laugh at the Gooker rule? You don't even know what the Gooker rule is.
Well, I'm
yet.
hoping we're not going to see this guy again until, another Survivor Series.
Well, we got to have a rule for it, though, just in case, just to be covered, because you never know what's going to happen. You never know what can happen in the World Wrestling Federation. So the Gooker rule is now, anytime the gobbledygooker appears, I'm allowed to skip the next match after the appearance of the gobbledygooker.
So long as it's a woman's match, correct?
No, I didn't say anything I'm not trying to be sexist or misogynistic. I'm just saying if the gobbledygooker appears, you're allowed to skip the next match.
What was the next match?
The next match happened to be a 30-minute long 10-girl elimination tag team match. And you got to be out of your rabbit-ass mind. You got to be as crazy as a rainbow trout in a car wash. You need to be ready to be stuck in a rubber room at the puzzle factory in one of those custom-made jackets with the long sleeves on it. To think that I was going to watch a 30-minute-long 10-girl elimination tag team match, if the men's tag team match was any indication, there's still no issue. You've just got the fucking two different brands with babyface and heels on the same team. Nothing's personal. And did I mention it's 10 girls? And Rhea Ripley was not involved. So all of those reasons were good enough for me. And then, did you watch it, Brian Last? Did you watch this match?
You know, sadly, I had it on. I didn't listen to the commentary. I did see finally, because I think we read a question last week on the show, maybe, where someone asked about Nia Jax, the one-woman botch machine, putting Lana through a table 8 times in a row. And we were saying, oh, that couldn't be accurate. Maybe it's something else. And then they showed the video. No, it was 8 times in a row. Yeah. And then Lana was told to stand on the stairs and started crying throughout the whole match. And then eventually she ended up winning because she was the only one who never got in the ring. Did anything. I thought Bianca Belair looked impressive, but I was high on her in NXT. I wish they did something different with Shayna Baszler, but I knew once she got up to the main roster, they would screw it up, and boy, have they. I have no other thoughts or opinions about this whole thing.
Well, and I have one more opinion. It's a very good thing that I did not watch it. If I had invested 30 solid minutes of my life to watch a 10-girl tag team match to end up with a gimmick finish where the winner was the only girl that never got in the ring but just stood there and sobbed the whole match, I would have broken my 82-inch television. So you know what I am suggesting, to be quite honest with you, this has just come to my mind right now. For those of you who are fans of real women's wrestling, they're all gone. They're somewhere else, except for poor Rhea Ripley, and she's going to be a movie star real soon. So I think what you need to do at Becky Lynch, she's off having a family. And Alundra Blaze, the mighty Medusa Michelli, she's retired and in the podcasting world. And Wendy Richter, she's gone away. You know what you need to do? All the great women stars from the past that were unique and different. You need to have a painting of all of them together, Brian Last. Because that way the fans of real women's wrestling can remember all the greats instead of having to look at Lana and the Southern Belle, what's her name?
Lacey Evans.
Lana and Lacey and
you just know Vince
lingerie.
Loves her. You know Vince loves Lacey Evans. You know it.
Oh, I'm sure he does. Well, folks, you'll love your painting, too, of all of the great women's wrestlers or anything else you want painted when you deal with the people that paint your life, because we've been talking about them here on the program for weeks and months now. If you've got pictures of different family members that have never been together from different eras. Maybe grandpa wasn't alive when little Sonny was born. And they never got the chance to have a picture taken together. Now you can. You can take different family photographs and combine them into a custom-made, hand-painted portrait with the folks at paintyourlife.com. Whether it's one picture or many pictures that you want combined, whether it's a place, a person, a thing, even a pet. If it's a gift for people in the family because they can't be together this year, whatever the case, a professional hand-painted portrait can be created from any photo at an affordable price. You just send the pictures or combine pictures, whatever, however many you want, and you work with Paint Your Life to get all the details right, and then, boom, takes about 3 weeks to get your hand-painted portrait. Makes a perfect holiday gift for you or someone in your family, and we can save you some money at paintyourlife.com. Besides the fact that there's no risk if you don't love the final painting, your money is refunded guaranteed, but now you can get 20% off and free shipping by texting the word DRIVE, D-R-I-V-E, to 64,000. That's 64 with 3 zeros after it. DRIVE to 64,000. Paint your life, folks. Celebrate the moments that matter most. I'll do anything to keep from talking about this pay-per-view event.
You know, we actually have been hearing from a lot of listeners on Twitter who have been using Paint Your Life and are really happy with it. I have to say, you know, people love all of our sponsors, but just lately, seen a flood of people talking about Paint Your Life.
We do get extra feedback on them because, well, it's the holidays, it's family time. So you want especially if people can't be together, you want the pictures.
Who would you get a painting of? If you could choose one subject or morph several subjects into one painting, what would you get?
I think I would go with Jack Pfeffer, Toots Mondt,
Wow,
Roy Shire, and Eddie Graham.
I don't think they would all get along. Not for 1 second.
That's why no picture exists. I would have to combine that to make a unique portrait from Paint Your Life.
I would pick Jack Curley trying to strangle Jack Pfeffer.
With Strangler Lewis trying to pull somebody apart.
Yeah.
All right, should we talk about any more of this? Actually, it gets better from here for a minute. Apparently, when last we reported on one of these big shows, what was it? Was it SummerSlam? When did Randy Orton beat Drew McIntyre for the title?
I don't think it was SummerSlam. It may have been one of the makeshift ones in between, but I don't remember. Was it Hell in a Cell?
It was Hell in a Cell. Randy Orton beat Drew McIntyre for the title. Drew McIntyre has already won it back. So what the...
Just this past week on TV, apparently.
Yes, he lost it and won it right back. And now he's going to face Roman Reigns. Both these guys look incredible. Roman Reigns, especially now, as he's, dropped the shirt and the whole 9 yards, but Roman Reigns and Drew McIntyre both look incredible. Visually, and in the way that this was built and the package that it was given and Heyman's along and, the way that they're treated on television, except for AJ Styles, Seth Rollins, and Bobby Lashley, really, these guys were the first stars on this show. I mean, and yes, I know they've done things with Owens and blah, 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 but I'm just talking about the whole package. Right now, momentum, look, presentation, the way that they've been booked, very few stars, as you said. And this was the first really main event fucking match. This was the first thing that I could see on this show that Vince McMahon would have been happy to have on the Survivor Series in the 90s. He would have, that era of Vince McMahon would have kind of been ticked off at everything he got up until now on this program, to me. That's just my fucking thought, but anyway, once again, it's two guys with the fucking belt. You can't be the man when there's two men, and it's each guy has a fucking belt here, and they've gone nuts with the fake crowd noise at this point in the show. It's distracting. But both these guys can go. They work this like a main event. They haven't made Drew McIntyre dominant. He beats Brock Lesnar, and then as we mentioned, he drops it to Orton and wins it back a week later, whatever the fuck. But he's really stepped up as a talent, and we've talked about him being penalized more with the no fans than anybody because of the incredible push, the beating Lesnar, all the shit they've given would have really been enhanced with crowds. But McIntyre can go for a guy that size, and he can sell. And he's a baby face because the other guy's a fucking heel because he got Alfred Hitchcock as his fucking manager. There's somebody to cheer for and somebody to cheer against. That it's two grown adult men that not only look like athletes but can work and have been presented as main event stars. And they took their time to start this out because everybody had already done everything else and started it like a contest. It was nice to see referee Rudy Charles. Anyway, they had a serious wrestling match that actually made sense. Got some heat on McIntyre. He made a big comeback. They panned the fake fans. Did you see this on more than one occasion?
Yeah.
I don't think you need to pan the fake fans in the fucking little boxes. That doesn't have the same thing as same impact as panning real people. That spine buster. By the way, McIntyre had a spine buster and kind of like a little float over jackknife. Once they kicked it in, this was really good. They started going back and forth with false finishes. I like the McIntyre foiled Reigns' spear and went into a double wrist lock. But I wrote at this point, does Paul Heyman ever interfere in a match? Ever? Is he the first manager ever to not interfere in any of his matches?
Remember, he's not a manager, he's an advocate.
Okay, but he's fucking out there.
He doesn't do anything.
He doesn't take a bump. He doesn't do anything offensive. He doesn't even pass gimmicks or foreign objects. He knows how to do this shit. He's been doing it for years, or did it years ago. It has to be a directive that he never get involved in any way. But why would you make that directive? That would be, I'm not saying he has to. Number one, look at the fucking state of him, as they say over in the kingdom. Look at the size of him. I don't expect him to take bumps like he did fucking years ago. I still could. I could take all the same bumps that I did. I would just hurt myself every time I landed. But he couldn't, just do anything sometimes because it would have impact because it's not overdone. He never does it.
He's like a heel Arnold Skoland.
Yeah.
He manages guys who don't need his interference, so he just stands there and watches. Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns. He's the heel Arnold Skoland.
But can you imagine how much heat it would have gotten if Brock Lesnar had ever been in one position one time against somebody where Heyman needed to grab Brock's leg and put it over the fucking bottom rope to save him? That could have been a little fucking out for the fucking Undertaker before they ended his streak. Anyway, so they were really kicking it in here, and I felt bad because they had obviously that Samoan drop onto the desk, the announced desk spot. They had it planned where it would blow just completely into pieces, and it didn't break. So Reigns had to do it again. I would have slowed down and not just gone back to the exact same move again to break it on purpose. But they did. And then Reigns speared him through the barricade, got a 2 count. Apparently they don't have holy shit on the soundboard, but they have this is awesome. Because no, whether it's awesome or not, those people are not there. You are recording and playing this is awesome, and that's not the same thing. And it's distracting to people rather than. But anyway, McIntyre kept kicking out of those false finishes. And somebody's going to say, well, he hates it when they do that on AEW. He always talks about it. Well, and they gave him a double arm DDT on the ramp. These were false finishes that were presented as something and meant something, but weren't presented as something that should kill a motherfucker. Yes, he speared this giant 6'6", 270-pound guy through a fucking barricade. Then he had to crawl into the goddamn ring or get him into the ring, and then 1-2, he kicked out, and then they sold in between everything. They made sense. Reigns was hitting him with his Superman punch or his spear, whatever the fuck. And as I said, McIntyre sells well for a big guy, not only facially, but with his body language. But then I don't know how I felt about the finish. Finally, McIntyre comes out of nowhere, hits the Claymore kick to Reigns, and Reigns flies into the referee, and Rudy almost wiped his nose off his face on the bottom rope going to the floor, poor fella. And then here comes Jey Uso, who's been blistered by Roman Reigns earlier and made to feel horrible because he lost. And he distracts Drew quickly to get nailed, and then Reigns nut shots McIntyre. Uso hits super kick. Reigns hits Superman punch. He gets the front face lock, and the second referee comes in and calls McIntyre out. Well, I don't know whether he tapped or he just passed out, but called it.
I think he passed out.
I think you're right. It probably would have been better if Eddie Graham was overseeing this. I don't know how I felt about the whole thing, because it was maybe a little much for McIntyre to kick out of all of that at the end, and it took everything in the goddamn world to beat him. It could have been a little bit simpler than the fucking, I don't know. What do you think?
It was a good match.
It got a little busy, I guess. I'm sorry.
It was a good match, and obviously Uso getting involved tied into earlier in the show where he had disappointed Roman Reigns. But I think I said to you several months ago that I think Drew McIntyre is a great look. I think he's really good in the ring. I think he's a good promo. I think he comes across like a star. You haven't beat Lesnar. You put the belt on him. I wouldn't beat him for any reason for a long time because there are no fans there. So you really got to just keep establishing that he's the guy. So when the fans finally come back, he has that aura. He has that mystique. He's the guy who hasn't lost that whole time. Since that time, he lost to Randy Orton, got the belt back, and then he lost here. And I get that they're probably setting it up for a bigger match down the road with these two guys. However, I think it's stupid. I think it's not good booking to beat him again. They've beaten him twice in the last couple months or 3 months, whatever it was.
Well, and some people are going to say, well, but, Roman Reigns, well, the thing is, I agree right now, Roman Reigns should not be beaten either. So that's why you don't book the match. Don't book this particular match.
This is a potential WrestleMania main event.
But for it in a year and a half from now, when there will be people, imagine if they had 2.5 years of neither one of these guys. Drew McIntyre's been undefeated, and Roman Reigns, he had enough cachet beforehand where he might could do a screwy thing or two and it still wouldn't hurt it, but they would never have had a match. And you could build that for a couple of years and have a dream contest when you needed to put people in a stadium again without just giving it to them now. And, we'll just do the Dusty finish and lead to which is the Eddie Graham finish, which is the Dory Funk Sr. finish, which is probably a goddamn cowboy what was his goddamn name? Not Cowboy Luttrell, he was in Florida, but fucking Cal Farley. Probably a Cal Farley finish from the 40s. I don't know. Not the greatest finish I ever saw.
And you know what? This is going to be very unpopular, but I don't care. It hasn't been done in a while. I can't think of the last one I've seen. Someone will say, it was last week. I can't think of it off the top of my head. But there's nothing wrong every now and again, to the point where you can't remember the last time it happened, with doing a double disqualification or a double countout or something, especially if there's no fans there to boo. There's nothing wrong with doing that if you have these two guys that are matched up down the road, and both guys don't need to lose right now.
I can see where people go, and that would be unpopular, and I also know you don't care. But in a case of something getting out of hand, a match getting out of hand, and people having to come a big pull apart, and people used to love that when they didn't give a fuck about the finish. They knew they were going to see a rematch, so they didn't care that it was a double DQ when there was fucking blood flying and people getting in the way and trying to fucking separate them, and there's chaos and pandemonium. The old wrestling days. You can't create that kind of chaos anymore. They don't know how to, at least. So it just makes the double DQs just kind of flat like everything else is these days. But I digress. I agree there, but everybody's going to complain about something, just like we are. But here's the next segment basically shows everybody what we're complaining about. Everybody that was introduced, except for the poor Godwins, and probably more people saw that. More people saw the Godwins wrestle on TV when they were in the WWF than are watching any of these people on this show currently. So the Godwins were bigger stars, and they were kind of there because they're Mark's friends. But everybody that was introduced is a major fucking wrestling star. Shane McMahon, The Big Show, JBL, Jeff Hardy, Mick Foley, The Godfather, no hose, damn it. Then the Godwins, Michael Cole said, well, they're real life friends of Undertaker.
Yeah, I heard that.
Damn it. Real life. Savio Vega, Rikishi, Kevin Nash, Booker T, Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair, Triple H, and Kane. I think Triple H got the biggest fake crowd pop. I think he did.
There was a fake Shane O'Mac chant.
Yes. Yeah, there was.
All these guys, by the way, being exposed to COVID-19. I kept thinking that the whole time. Like, Man, Ric Flair now, too. All these guys are at risk being next to each other, hugging each other, slapping hands with each other.
Well, in all fairness, I'm sure that all these people got tested, but they all had to travel and get there somehow.
I know, that's
right?
what I was thinking. That's what I was thinking. I hate to say that my mind went there.
Yeah.
But my mind went there, and then...
Well, anytime I see anybody in public these days, my mind goes there. Like, what the fuck are you doing? But there were 5 times as many stars in the ring at this moment than there were on the entire show. And then, they went to the Undertaker video, and this is where the WWE shines. And we've talked about this. Their production and the people that work in that studio, the editors, the PAs, the production assistants, the researchers, the people that go through and log all that video. You don't just sit down with 5, fucking U-matic cassettes and get all those highlights and in that wonderful order. You have people logging video for fucking ages. The vibe of the video, to encapsulate his career, the action, and then the comments from the stars. Steve Austin may be right. Is Undertaker the best career ever? 30 years, the same gimmick, tweaks of the gimmick, but same name, same gimmick, working for the biggest promotion on earth and a main event guy from day one till the last day. And probably has made more money in aggregate over those 30 years than it has to be the best career ever, doesn't it?
It's up there. What's the best is subjective, obviously.
Well, I mean, best career, that's not saying he's the best wrestler ever.
Yeah, Bruno had a great career. Bruno came in, he was in the main events pretty quickly, made more money than anyone at that time, had more power than anyone at that time.
Yeah, but Bruno only got about, 22 years?
By choice.
30.
By choice, though. I mean, that's the thing. Undertaker, it was a different era, too. He was able to work just a handful of times a year due to the WrestleMania thing, but that's part of it, too. He got to the point where he was such a star that you couldn't wait to see what he was going to do, who he was going to wrestle at WrestleMania every year. That was such a big deal. We get more requests for those matches as watch-alongs, I think, than anything else. Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, Undertaker, Triple H, those Undertaker WrestleMania matches really connected with so many fans.
But at any rate, those videos, what they did here, that's where they shine. But also, honestly, they've got all that video because those guys gave you of that era, the 80s and 90s guys gave you more visuals. When they were doing shit, it seemed more visual because they were more visual. Nobody looks like Undertaker anymore. But then they come out of the video and there's Vince in the empty ring and we never saw any of the stars ever again. All they ever did was walk to the ring and nobody ever even spoke. And you never saw them again afterwards.
I thought they were going to toast the Undertaker or something.
There should have been something like a salute, or they're standing on the floor in the background in the shadows and saluting him as he walked. It just disappeared. I mean, if I had traveled in the middle of a pandemic all the way for that thing. Anyway, we got to address it. Vince McMahon had so much makeup on, he looked like one of the Twilight Zone characters where you start pounding on his in House of Wax, pounding on his face and it's going to crack. And for some reason, his eyebrows resembled Mark Leonard in the episode where he played Spock's father in Star Trek.
Uncle Leo on Seinfeld.
Uncle Leo on Seinfeld, but if Uncle Leo was from the planet Vulcan.
Did you see what Jeremy Bagley tweeted out?
No, I didn't.
I don't like to speak ill of the dead, but it looks like the Undertaker's last act in WWE was the taxidermy Vince.
Oh my God. And I mean, he's smaller and he was being gracious, Vince, but he's aged. It wasn't a commanding performance like the days of old where he commanded your attention and he commanded the ring and you could tell he had full, control of everybody and everything in his palm of his hand, from the cadence of his voice to the way that, it ain't there anymore, is it? He looks like Vince Sr.
No, he looks worse than Vince Sr. And Vince Sr. was younger when he passed
Well, but
away.
I was about to say Vince looks now like Vince Sr. looked when he was in his mid-50s. So, I mean, Vince has definitely taken much better care of himself and genetics and whatever the fuck else, but it's finally happening eventually.
He looked really bad, and the makeup was just bizarre looking at his face, and, I'd focus on a different thing, like, okay, his eyebrows, what the hell's going on there? And then, is he wearing lipstick? Or is it everything around his lips that make his lips look like, he looked really bizarre. His hair dye, just everything, and his voice is obviously shot. It's been a slow thing that we've seen happen over the years, but at this point, his voice is gone, and I hate to say it, but I keep thinking this is the guy running the creative show now there. We all think of Vince McMahon. If you don't see him, you think of one thing, but when you see him and you see him like this and he's a shriveled up old man, it didn't have the impact that I think he wanted it to have.
I wish Vince would get more rest. I really do.
Did you see the bags under his eyes? I've never noticed it before, but the makeup made it really pop out, especially when he turned it aside. Massive bags under his eyes.
That's what I'm afraid. I don't know. I hadn't been around him in ages on a regular and personal basis, but I'm afraid he's still trying to keep the same kind of schedule as he did 20 years ago, now that he's in his mid 70s. And I wish he'd just rest and relax every once in a while. It made me feel bad. But anyway, and then the laser show and the extended entrance. Actually, I think they could have got away with just charging us on the pay-per-view or whatever the fuck for this ceremony and let the legends say something, and it would have been better and not as taxing for us to watch as the actual event that preceded this. I always get goosebumps on the entrance. I got goosebumps watching this. I really did. That's one thing I will say. I always liked the NWA style of wrestling, Southern wrestling. It was more raw, had more passion, emotion, or whatever. And of course, I was in the middle of a number of stinkers in my WWF run, managing in matches that didn't, go down on anybody's all-time classics list. But the ones that I was in, especially with Yokozuna with Taker, not only did those matches get over almost all the time, because Taker's matches always got over, but that entrance could not have been replicated anywhere else. And to be in a sold-out NBA arena, and with that, the production crew they even had back then in the late 90s, where they would have the fucking lightning and the music and the PA system would knock birds out of the air. And the lightning would be striking, and the flashes of the lights would go off, and that fucker Mark would start coming down the aisleway, and it was Undertaker. And the spotlights, and you'd see the fucking giant, profile of him, and not profile, but the giant, figure of him as he came through the smoke and the mist and everything. You would get goosebumps standing in the ring. That was fucking cool. That was one of the cooler moments of being involved in the WWF at that point in time. So I got goosebumps again. And he did the promo and gimmick, and it had to be hard to do too. It was nice verbiage, but it had to be hard. He was milking it, probably because he didn't want to actually come out with it to say "'tis now time to let the Undertaker rest in peace." And then he knelt for the hologram of, that's what they call it, right? The hologram of Percy. And Percy's, "Oh yes." And that was a nice touch. It's a shame they couldn't have done it with people. With
that was
fans
my big
takeaway.
That was my biggest takeaway. The fact that this is happening, purportedly the last appearance, the last ride of the Undertaker, whatever you want to call it, and there's no one there. That was, and fake crowd noise all throughout this thing. That was my biggest takeaway.
And they had the announcers lay out. They could have laid the fake crowd out. That would have been better. Let the announcers wrap it up at the end and put some type of period on it. But they didn't need the fake crowd. But I think the only reason I can think of for not waiting to do this when people are back in arenas of some description next year, whatever it may be, Because it's not like people were clamoring for, let's put the fucking nail in the coffin, no pun intended, on the Taker. It's because he's starting to open up as a person and be on, social media and do appearances as himself and all this other stuff. Do you think that they wanted to get it done before the mystique is lost and put the Undertaker to rest in peace or whatever?
I don't know. I think the mystique isn't what it once was, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. All things considered, he's semi-retired or retired, and he's done a bunch of interviews. I mean, I've seen interviews with him all over the place in the last couple of weeks. You never saw him interviewed ever. All of a sudden, he's talking to everybody on Zoom.
Shut him up.
Yeah.
He's doing Cameo.
Oh, my God. Yeah. Well,
tell Aunt Betty to rest in peace. What the fuck? Oh, God. Actually, I went up to him one time. Somebody had told me, hey, there's this kid out there, and he's terminally ill, right? And he's a young kid, and Undertaker's his hero. Can you have the picture signed? I said, sure. And so I take it back there, and Mark, I said, this kid, and I explain the situation. And he takes it, and he starts to sign it, and he writes R, and then he goes, and he scratched it out. He put something else, made it a B, like best always or whatever, because he realized he was about to write. That's the way he signed all his autographs. Rest in peace, the Undertaker, right? But he didn't want to write rest in peace, his terminally ill child. Then he caught it in the nick of time. So anyway, and rest in peace, Survivor Series 2020.
No one will miss you.
Not one thing. This will not be memorialized on any of that. They won't be doing retrospectives of this one years in the future as they do on some of the other ones.
Sometimes I watch something like this and I say, my God, I think they're poisoning my head. The same way some of these big companies poison the environment and poison anyone who uses their chemically, I don't even know what the fuck I'm saying anymore.
Chemically altered products.
That's right.
I'll take it from here, Skippy. If you have been damaged by people putting out shamelessly negligent and treacherous and dangerous products, whether they've poisoned your air or your water, whether you've been the victim of cancer causing Roundup and landscaping devices, whether you have been in some way or another damaged by the defective earplugs that the 3M company gave our military service members, or the opioid addiction from the big pharmaceutical companies pushing these things down our throats, or the Zantac, cancer from Zantac. I'm still a little trepidatious about that one myself with my history of acid problems in my stomach. No matter who's poisoned you or how, there's somebody that can get even and poison them where it hurts, and that's in the wallet.
Call Stephen P. News. If you need to sue. An outlaw mud show or two. He'll sue the rest.
Yes, folks, I don't know why he trusts us to make seamless transitions into his spots on these programs, but Stephen P. New is a man that you can trust to go to court and fight for your rights and have you compensated when you've been damaged or harm has been done to you by some of these greedy multinational corporations. At newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084, Stephen and his band of legal ninjas awaits the opportunity to deploy themselves down their ropes under cover of darkness, sneak into these courtrooms, and take by force, if necessary, what should be yours to begin with. They will do it like ninjas in the night. Ninjas in the night. All right. Stephen P. New, newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. If you're getting class action stuff together to sue for the refund of your pay-per-view fee for the Survivor Series, I believe Stephen will be entertaining cases such as that as well this coming week. I'm sure he'll get a lot of calls.
I'm sure he will. Well, speaking of a lot of calls, we got a lot of questions that were sent in. We need to get to some of these before the watch-along.
Oh, thank God we do have a palate cleanser, by the way. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Later on, we will be watching in honor that this is Thanksgiving week. You didn't even mention you're the host of the show. You're supposed to talk about how happy Turkey Day to everybody, and we hope you eat until you puke and all that stuff. But anyway, this is Thanksgiving week. So we're going to go back 35 years, the anniversary at Starrcade 85, Tully Blanchard, Magnum T.A, I Quit match. We're going to do that as a palate cleanser, two grown men having a fight with each other.
Winner gets Tully's wife.
Hey, that was not the stipulation. It just worked out that way. But nevertheless.
Well, Jim, before we get to that watch along, let's get a few questions in here. And actually, something that several people have sent in the last couple of hours. You mentioned earlier, The Undertaker is now on Cameo. And of course, for a long time, they were trying to get you on Cameo. They approached you a long time ago, and you just said, I don't have the time, the patience, the desire, the knowledge to do the technology.
Here was what it was going to, because people would keep asking me about it. And it's not that I don't want to do it. It's just that, you know as well as I do not have another 10 minutes in a day. And I can't imagine I would have to arrange to close down something else, either the podcast or the merchandise business or whatever, to have time, because I know that it would be somewhat popular. And then I'd have to figure out, I'd have to hire a camera person with the phone and the apparatus, because I don't think Stacy would have the patience to do 400 1-minute fucking promos. So I don't want to open that can of peas just yet. I'm not against the concept.
Well, of course, The Undertaker went the other way. He charged $1,000, so fewer people, but more money.
And I can't in good conscience ask anybody to pay. I mean, The Undertaker, that's a special thing, yes. But I've cussed many people, so I can't ask them to pay $1,000 a piece for me to cuss them.
We have some sound bites of The Undertaker on Cameo. Would you like to hear them?
No, we don't.
Yes, we do.
Can we play this?
We will be playing them.
Well, I mean, I don't mean can we, but I mean, will we get in trouble? Do we need to call Steven at 888-692-8084?
I don't think so, because it's on Twitter. It was posted by someone. I'll give him credit.
Oh, so it's somebody else's fault.
That's right.
Okay.
It's someone. His name is Boss Maz. And here are some Undertaker Cameo clips. Let me play the first one.
It's The Undertaker. And your mom reached out to me. She told me you started a new school this year. In fact, she also said that you were quite the baseball player.
Oh, no. All right, hold on. That's the, it loops itself. That was the first one. Here's another one.
I just wanted to reach out and tell you it's going to be okay. You just keep waking up every morning and putting one foot in front of the other. And it's all going to work out eventually. You can do this. I have faith in you.
And if you can't believe the living incarnation of death when he reaches his hand out to touch you, that everything's going to be okay, who can you believe?
And he's in a black Undertaker coat. He's wearing his Undertaker outfit underneath it. He has the hat.
Hey, some guys hooked up to all kinds of fucking tubes in the hospital. And they feel, well, he's a wrestling fan, so we'll get him this. It'll make him feel better. And he regains consciousness through a haze of his medically induced coma. And the first thing he sees on a screen is The Undertaker saying, I'm reaching out to you. Fuck. To give the guy some fucking acid, you'll really fucking...
Let's play this one.
It's The Undertaker. And all the votes have been cast, and they've all been tallied. And it looks like you, Robbie, are the greatest Undertaker fan of the last 30 years. With you and your collectibles, you've become the #1 fan of The Undertaker. The #1 fan. The #1 creature of the night. Robbie, you are the man. And you are the #1 fan.
All right.
That's The Undertaker's. I've looked in bars. I've looked in cars. And here you are. What, did Robbie have to pay extra? Or who stuffed the ballot box? Was this a rigged election? We've gotten in a lot of trouble talking about rigged elections here on the program lately.
We have. Let's hear another one from The Undertaker. the undead Undertaker.
I got your note.
What?
And before I thank the McMahons, I want to thank you for being such a fan.
I don't know if I've ever heard either the Undertaker on television or Mark Calloway in real life say, I got your note.
Thank you. Thank you for being such a great husband. Thank you for being such a wonderful father. Thank you.
Oh, Jim, you got to start doing cameos. You got to start doing these.
I don't know if I could say thank you for being such a wonderful husband with the same gravitas that,
You should give your mom a big hug. Tell her it's from the Undertaker.
Oh, God. Yes, scare mom to death. Hey, Mom. Here's a big hug for you. Did you ever see the movie Death Takes a Holiday? Oh, fucking. Oh, my God.
AJ, you're fine. Real fine.
What?
Darrell, and anybody who doesn't like it can rest in peace.
Was that you're fine? You're real fine?
That's what it was, yeah.
So can you use your own verbiage, or are they giving him verbiage?
Well,
Specific verbiage?
I think some of this has
My
to be
face hurts.
some of this has to be directed by the person paying, but like the Robbie, you're my number one fan, where he ran out of things to say, so he just kept repeating over and over new ways to say you're my number one fan.
Of all the numbers, you're one of them.
All right, here's another one.
You take day by day, step by step, and each day things are going to get much better. And one day, your heart surgery will be a distant memory.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
But I won't, because I'll be haunting your dreams.
So if you make it through this heart surgery, just remember, I'll be haunting you forevermore. That's something to look forward to. That'll get me right through that surgery.
And if people don't go out and buy that book, they may come face to face with horror. Horror of the Undertaker. Buy the book.
Okay, that was that one.
That's just a simple extortion threat, isn't it?
That is. We have one last one that I see here. Let's go to this one.
All elite Scooby-Doo. That's how I'm going to address you. Well, all elite Scooby-Doo. Congratulations on getting married. You did the right thing.
All elite Scooby-Doo. Well, Jim, here's the Undertaker on Cameo. I mean, at least he's in gimmick. I'll give him that.
Hey, you've hurt me. I've got a chest pain here. My face hurts. Oh, that is not... that's not a gimmick. It's the greatest gimmick in the history of wrestling, but it's not a gimmick that lends itself to fan greeting messages. It's not like Jimmy Hart's, hey, poo-poo, love you guys, hey, keep it rocking and rolling, baby, yeah. It's hard to exhort people to want to live another day when you're actually the reaper of death.
Does this change the way you think of Cameo? You can do these. You can crank these out.
Let's get the feedback from the Cult of Cornette audience. Who wants to pay $1,000 a piece to see me cuss you out?
I want to know who All Elite Scooby-Doo is who wanted to get a congratulations on their wedding.
I thought they were going to... Did you see the Trump Scooby-Doo?
Yes,
You saw the
that.
Trump
Yes,
Scooby.
yes.
I thought they were going to Scooby-Doo. What does Scooby do? Scooby doesn't do. It should be Velma.
You know, and he says it so slowly, I didn't know where he was going. All Elite. I was like, oh my God, where's he going? Where's he going here? Well, it sounds like a lot of people.
That one had to raise an eyebrow when they were shooting it. All Elite. Huh? Scooby-Doo.
I think a lot of people got their money's worth.
Actually, that may be the next All Elite Superstar. All Elite Scooby-Doo.
All Elite Scooby-Doo.
They're the Cartoon Network. They're in the same family over there.
Turner, that's right.
Right?
Well,
All Elite Scooby-Doo.
Let's not give Chris Jericho any ideas. Let's get another question, or actually our first question. This was sent in to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from someone who requested we do not use their name. Jim, what was the last conversation you had with Vince McMahon? Did he talk to you at any point after you went to OVW? Also, at the Hall of Fame, did he give you the big hug he is known to do?
Yes, he did. And that was the last conversation I had with Vince, was at the Hall of Fame. Funny how that works out. That's the last time I saw him. Actually, they were doing a walkthrough and they have to walk through everything. I guess they want to make sure all the Hall of Fame guys could still walk. That may have been a concern. But it consisted of, we were going to be on one side of the gorilla position, or we were going to be in the gorilla position, I should say. And we would walk out on the right-hand side of the podium, go to the podium, and then leave the stage by the left-hand side and go back to the gorilla position. It was very intricate stuff. So while we're standing back there to do the walkthrough, I wasn't really paying any attention. But when I walked around the corner, there was Vince out on the stage because, of course, he has to be there to personally make sure everybody can walk. So when I turned around, there he was, and he saw me. And that's why I didn't picture our big reunion to be, because there was like 300 or 400 people in the building between all the boys and crew people and technicians and et cetera. I said, I didn't expect to be at a public our reunion to be in such a public sphere. And he gave me the big hug. Welcome home. He said, I know you might not have always felt like it was your home, but you're home here. Well, thank you, Ben. Maybe a home I might want to put on the market and move somewhere else. But anyway. No, and that was just briefly there. And then later on I did, because let's face it, to be honest, after some of the comments that I've made concerning their company and various practices, for them to invite me back and for them to put the rock and roll in, that was a nice thing. So I took Vince, what do you get, the billionaire that has everything? I took him a magazine from my collection that had an article about Jess McMahon on it. It was from 1929. Now, he ain't got this, or I would have seen it in his house. So I gave him that as a token of my appreciation, also for the 5-figure payoff that I got for the goddamn night. And we talked for a couple minutes, and everything was pleasant. And then I left his office, and I saw Kevin Dunn in the hallway, and he saw me, and I kept on walking, and he never turned around, and we ignored each other. So it was even better.
You said you would have seen it in his house. Did he have much wrestling stuff or anything that you saw related to his father or grandfather in the house?
No, actually, there was very little if anything, in his personal office in the house. You know, he had a few things and some plaques and some pictures, dad stuff, but it wasn't like a wrestling treasure trove. Probably even most of the boys probably have more wrestling memorabilia up in their various houses than he did. And I mean, there was some family stuff, but not in a wrestling context. So, but I would have seen something like that, because that would have caught my eye. If he had, then I would assume he would have something like that on display.
Speaking of your time around the Hall of Fame, this next question was sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Rory in Shawanu, Wisconsin?
What? What are you saying?
Is it Shawanu? Shawano, Wisconsin.
Shawano.
In Shawano, Wisconsin. What I meant to say.
Yes, that's what you said.
I just saw your segment on a recent episode of WWE Storytime, exclusively on the WWE Network, where you were at the amusement.
How do we get that plug in?
He put it in his email. If that is indeed his real name, Rory from Shawano, Wisconsin, where you were at the amusement park riding the Ferris wheel, and fans spotted you and were waiting for you to get off so they could beat you up. Did you know you were recording the segment for WWE Storytime, or was it just a random interview? Also, will we expect any more animated stories from you for WWE Storytime? Oh, I didn't even realize this. There's an animated Jim Cornette story on the network?
Yeah, well, that's what Storytime is.
I don't watch it. I haven't watched it.
Well, and actually, they did tell me, no, actually what they asked me, well, do you have any strange amusement park experiences? And I just admit, no, they said this is for story time. And they do the animation thing where and I did that at the Hall of Fame there also. I don't remember if I did any more. It's been 3.5 years now. So I would assume if they had anything, they would have aired it by now. Like the hour and some minutes that they cut out of the Table for Three, where me and Eric sniped at each other a little longer, and et cetera. And then we just roasted Russo for about 30 minutes. But anyway, that was back in Charlotte. The story basically goes that, we worked every day of the week and twice on Saturday and twice on Sunday and blah, blah, blah. And days off were rare and precious. And I finally got a day off, and we lived in Charlotte. And this is my better half at the time. Obviously wanted to do something, some type of family something. I said, well, okay. And she wanted to go to the amusement park, Carowinds amusement park down there, right next to Tammy Faye and Jim Baker's layout and all that stuff. They had a lot of amusement parks in Charlotte. Anyway, so, okay, it's a Thursday or whatever. And I'll put the baseball cap on where I look like Ronnie Howard as Opie Taylor when I put a baseball cap on. And we'll go to the amusement park and we'll have fun. Well, that cap really didn't do anything to cover my face up. And I tried to, dress down the whole 9 yards. But as soon as we go in the park, the first thing we do is ride the Ferris wheel. Well, we get on the Ferris wheel. And you know how when you get on, they're stopping it at the bottom to put other people on. And then you end up getting stopped on the top. Well, now, as I've gone around a couple times, the kids have started to notice me. And they've started spreading the word. So now by the time I'm sitting up at the top, I can see the whole park, and everybody in the park can see me when they're pointing, that's Cornette. It's Cornette. Ah, shit. So as soon as we get down and get off the thing, we go inside into the skee ball, the arcade and everything. And it's dark and it's inside. The heat's off, right? They follow us in there. What the fuck? So then we go out the other side, and we're standing in line for another ride. And the line, at least it was one of those lines that snake around to where if you're not the people immediately in front of us or the people immediately behind us, you can't really see us and you can't get to us, right? So we're going to get on this ride. And as soon as we snakes around, and we're only like 15 people from getting on this ride, I look up there. I said, well, that looks like Doug Dillinger, who was one of Crockett's security guys. He was an ex-Charlotte cop, and he did camera work, and he also was security he was the one that jerked Sting down off the cage in Corpus Christi and blew his ACL. Anyway, I said, that looks like Doug Dillinger. I said, it is Doug Dillinger. And he was right in front of Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson. The day that we had picked to go to Carowinds was the day that they were finally doing the win a date with the Rock and Roll Express, and we're going to take you to Carowinds. I didn't know where they were going. And they've got the girls that have won the contest, and Doug's shepherding them around and everything. I said, fuck. Now we've got to go backwards because I can't have the people see me this close to the Rock and Roll Express. And if the people see me and see them, then they're going to have to come over here and beat the fuck out of me, right? So we start battling back against the tide as fast as we can to go back out the wrong way out of the line so that nobody will see me in the line with the rock and roll up there while they go off on the ride. And then we just went and got in our car and went home. And that was the experience of my amusement park visit.
I love the idea that some kid was there to meet the Rock and Roll Express. And they're like, you're not going to believe who was there in disguise. Jim Cornette.
Yeah.
He was on the Ferris wheel.
Well, because if they'd have seen me in the line, some of them would have thought he's trying to sneak up and hit him from behind. So anyway, it was because they took shit seriously in the Carolinas when Flair was in the plane crash and he was in the hospital. Wahoo was a babyface, Flair was a heel, but Wahoo was the guy who put the word in with George Scott, bring this kid Flair in from the AWA from Minneapolis. He was a mentor to Flair at the time. He waited till late one night to sneak into the hospital and go up the back stairs to visit Flair, right? To try to steal kayfabe. And the fans, people, civilians weren't around. But when the actual hospital staff, the doctors, the nurses, whoever was on call on the floor, when they saw Wahoo McDaniel come out of the stairway and go into Flair's room, they called the fucking security, and they thought Wahoo McDaniel is here to attack Ric Flair. And security came to get him the fuck out of there before an incident took place.
Even a better example from that plane crash, how serious they took things. Didn't they rush Tim Woods, Mr. Wrestling, back to one of the shows?
Oh, no. Well, that, as a matter of fact, that story is in Behind the Curtain, my graphic novel, the bestseller, by the way, available at JimCornette.com. Order before December 10th if you can. They didn't rush him. Woods did, because when they were all listed in the newspaper after the crash, because it was news in the Wilmington newspaper, and then it was picked up regionally and etc. Tim Woods, because he was the only babyface on the plane, had given them his real name, George Wooden. And he identified himself as a promoter. So in the actual newspaper clippings, which are reproduced in the book, George Wooden, wrestling promoter, is listed, and David Crockett, everybody knew him. He was one of the promoters also. But amongst the more in tune fans in the territory, rumors started going around that Woods, and they knew Tim Woods was Mr. Wrestling. He had unmasked enough, but the mask thing wasn't the issue. It was that he was a babyface. They knew, or they thought they knew, that Tim Woods had been in the crash. That was a rumor. So Woods checked himself out of the hospital and went back and worked not only a couple of short house show matches, but a TV taping match, so that it would air all over the territory. And basically, nobody would believe that this guy, and I mean, he didn't have any injuries that really showed. I think they even did a thing because he was taped up because he had like rib problems, that where he was able to keep his he was able to keep his jacket on if his ribs were taped up, whatever, and do a short match. But the point is, nobody that would have believed that a guy that was just in this plane crash where all these fucking people got fucked up was wrestling like days later. And he did that a couple of times to be seen, once on television, just to fucking show everybody. And then he went back home and recuperated. But he felt that, and everybody was right, Jim Crockett Jr. actually paid tribute to him for saving his business. If at the time, the way that people viewed Mid-Atlantic Wrestling and the guys in it, and the credibility that it had with their fan base, which was huge at that time, everybody thought that if they found out that Mr. Wrestling Tim Woods was on the plane with all those heels and blah, 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 it'd kill the fucking business. And it may very well have at that time because of the way people felt about it. So he had to. So the title of the chapter of the book is basically the way that Ric Flair described him in Flair's book, The Man Who Saved Wrestling. Flair paid tribute to him. Crockett did too, as a guy who saved. He put the well-being of everybody's business and everybody's career and the health of Mid-Atlantic Wrestling ahead of his own, to try to make sure that he didn't ruin the credibility of the wrestling business.
When you say Crockett paid tribute to him, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, he said that. He made a statement. He said that he could never, I can't even call it off the top of my head word for word, but that he could, always remember and could never forget, as they say, the sacrifice that Tim Woods made for him and his family's business in doing what he did to prevent wrestling from being exposed in the Carolinas.
All right, well, let's get a few more questions before this watch-along from the Carolinas. This next one was sent to CornyDriveThru.
From North Carolina!
All right, Dr. Tom Miller. This next one was sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Dalton Hastings.
Oh, that's a gimmick name if ever I've heard one.
Hey guys, been enjoying the shows. Just wanted to ask Jim what he remembers from the 2 Yokozuna Undertaker casket matches from 1994. One was at the Royal Rumble, and the other at the Survivor Series. I know Jim wasn't in the office at the time, he was running Smoky Mountain Wrestling, but I figured I would ask, does Jim remember who was the guy dressed as the Undertaker as he was levitating at the Royal Rumble? Also, whose idea was it to bring Chuck Norris into the World Wrestling Federation for Survivor Series?
Oh, goddamn. Well, first off, I said a few minutes ago, loved the entrance and being in the ring for that. And Taker and Yoko's matches were always good because Yoko would bump and could take big bumps if there was somebody in there that was big enough to give them to him. And Taker he was more mobile than any of Yoko's other giant opponents, think John Tenta. So he could still do some good. You could have a really exciting action-packed match, but he was still big enough to make Yoko sell. Loved most all of their matches. I've told this story many times. Hated the fucking finish where he was levitated to heaven on the screen and everything. Not only because it was somewhat hokey with, I can't remember who it was. That, somebody close in size, I don't even remember if it was one of the boys that was levitated up after he was thrown in the casket. I thought that was a little far-fetched at that point for the realism in the wrestling business. And also, I hated the finish just as a finish because it didn't get any good heat on any of the heels. Because you'll remember that's where every heel on the roster hit the ring and helped Yoko beat shit out of the Undertaker and put him in the casket. No babyface ever came to help. It was done right in front of the referee because with a casket match, there's no rules, blah, blah, blah. But I hated that finish because nobody came to help. It was just done in front of the referee. It was just blatant bleh. And it was because Taker was taking time off. No, that's say that 3 times fast, but he was taking time off. It may have been an injury. May have been nagging injuries, and they wanted to send him to, the great beyond for a while so he could make a big comeback. That's great. I just didn't like the way that it was done, and that's why I've told a story. I was standing next to the ring post hoping that nobody in Smoky Mountain in that territory would see it, because I'm like, oh, fuck, this guy's going to levitate to the fucking ceiling. All of their other matches were great. I even liked the casket match as a gimmick for Undertaker. That makes sense. And you could even do, as I've mentioned before here recently, Yokozuna being afraid of a casket. Because we actually did a shoot here in OVW with Leviathan, Batista, at a funeral home, a real funeral home, where we'd open the coffin and he'd sit up. I think it was building up for him and the Undertaker. And he was fucking scared of getting in it at the funeral home. For real. So, it was just that one particular Survivor Series casket match I was not a fan of. Otherwise, I always enjoyed working with Taker, and the checks were wonderful.
Who floated to the ceiling?
Well, that's why I said I can't remember who the fuck it was. I don't think it was one of the boys necessarily. I think it was just somebody dressed as Undertaker. Because, it didn't need to be a personality because you didn't know who it was going to be anyway.
What about Chuck Norris?
Oh, Chuck Norris. Good Lord. That was good. Walker, Texas Ranger was on USA at the time, right? The USA Network. And it was just another celebrity crossover thing, except, remember, Jeff Jarrett had to take the sidekick. Somewhere or another, they wanted just Chuck Norris to be physical in some brief capacity. And since he's an ex-karate guy, I don't know whether his blue jeans were too tight or whether he hadn't warmed up or loosened up or whether he was older at that point, but he threw a fucking sidekick at Jeff Jarrett that if Jeff crouched down so it would catch him in the upper thigh, he barely got his fucking foot 2.5 feet off the ground and Jeff took a big bump. That's pretty much, it was a crossover with USA Network.
Were they good friends the whole time, Undertaker and Yokozuna, or did they become good friends during the feud?
No, I think so. Well, because I came in after, Taker had been there and Yoko had been there for a little while, but they were already fine friends by the time I got there. I think, it it didn't take working with each other. And also because Yoko was a member of the family, and he's being managed from the start by Fuji. So, it wasn't like they had to find common ground and come together and be friends on purpose.
You think last night on Survivor Series, when they had that tribute to The Undertaker with all the various people from BSK and all various friends of his, you think Brian Lee was sitting at home saying, "What have I done? What have I done?"
God damn it. He's thinking, God damn it. Yeah, that bridge got blown up a while back.
All right, here's our next question, Jim, sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Cody in Cypress, Texas. I'm smoking a ham on my grill, so I'm...
Is that some of the young people's slang these days? Is he using some kind of illegal drugs?
Maybe in Cypress, Texas.
He's smoking a ham on the grill. That'll get you 3 to 5 years down in Texas.
I'm smoking a ham on my grill, so I'm sitting in my garage drinking a beer and thinking about the Steiner brothers in early 1990s WCW, as one does. In late 1990, Scott ran the gauntlet. For those of you who don't remember, let me just jump in. That was, You win a match on the Friday show, the Saturday show, and the Sunday show, and you win a monetary prize for doing so, allegedly.
Allegedly.
Scott ran the gauntlet against Beautiful Bobby, Ric Flair, and Arn Anderson, defeating the three in consecutive weeks on WCW Saturday Night. Oh, it says weeks here. I guess maybe I'm wrong.
No, actually, you were right. It was the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday show running the gauntlet.
He went on to take on Ric Flair to a time-limit draw in a championship match at Clash of the Champions 14. Rumors suggest he was offered the title by Flair and Dusty, but refused because he didn't want to break up the team with his brother. Later in 1991, after Flair left, Luger was champ and Rick Steiner got a title shot at Clash of the Champions 17, where the best spot of the match was Scott hitting a Frankensteiner on Mr. Hughes. Scott got another abbreviated singles run in late 1992 when Rick was injured, and even won the TV title for a few weeks before heading to the World Wrestling Federation with his brother. My question is, I know Jim wasn't in the promotion at the time, but to what extent did loyalty to his brother keep Scott Steiner from being a main event player and world champion in the early 90s WCW, especially in the Ric Flairless world of 1991 to 1993? How much would a Scott Steiner singles run had helped the main event scene in WCW at the time? And in a vacuum, how soon after his debut should Scott Steiner have been pushed as a single main event star?
Good Lord, is this an essay question? I'll try to hit the high points. I don't know that Dusty or Flair were sitting down trying to twist Scott Steiner's arm to take the belt from Flair. I mean, we talked about recently on one of the shows the issue where Dusty kind of used Rick Steiner because he was a shooter as a way to get back at Flair right before Dusty got let go as Booker by Turner over the issues that they had. You got to remember, Scotty was still green in 1991 and 2. The reason why he ran the gauntlet, they had set that thing up and not a lot of people did it. But and the reason why it was with Arn, Flair, and Bobby was to make Scott look as good as possible because, and there's the best workers, because they wanted to push Scott, no doubt about it. They were pushing Scott. They were pushing Scott and Rick as a team. Rick had already had a nice run as a single, and they wanted to make sure that, everybody knew that Scotty was a force to be reckoned with. And there was conversation about, potentially putting the belt on him, but I don't think they were beating his door down to do it that early. Because as I said, when did he start? 88? Just working what was left of Bruiser's promotion in Michigan
it was before that. Was it by 88
was it
he
86?
got to Memphis? Yeah.
No, it was 86-ish. Him and
the Great Wojo.
The Great Wojo, yeah. But anyway, and they didn't want to break the tape, but also at the time, I don't know if Scott was ready to be a single. He was a babyface then in WCW. I don't know if he was ready to be a singles world champion. I think the Steiners were more important as a team to the company overall than Scott would have been as the singles champion at that point in time, because Luger and Sting were still young and in great shape, and blah, blah, blah. I think Scotty, after he became Big Papa Pump, had more singles world champion personality and promo and gimmick and etc. But it may have been talked about, as he said. The guy asked a question that was after I'd left. It may have been talked about, but I don't think it was like, everybody was, just begging him to do it, and he wouldn't leave Rick. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't remember hearing about that. Do you?
I don't know. I mean, I know there was long-standing heat between him and Flair. Wasn't there that he thought Flair kind of sandbagged him in that Clash of the Champions match?
Yeah, that's right. He did think that, but I honestly, I think Flair was just trying to have the same match he usually had at that point with everybody else, and Scotty wanted to do different shit. I don't know. It's one of those things, because I know that Flair was high on Scott when he was Booker, Flair was Booker, and I was working with Flair. Underneath Flair, as they say. He was high on both the Steiners, so I don't know what happened.
I just went back again because it was a big topic last week with the whole Observer Hall of Fame talk, the Steiner brothers, and someone asked me on Twitter the other day, what Steiner brothers matches would you recommend if I've never seen any? And right away off the top of my head, I named a few. Them and the Nasty Boys at Halloween Havoc, them against Fujinami and Iizuka at Wrestle War 92, which is just brutal. Them against Gordy and I would say Hansen, Gordy and Steve Dr. Death Williams. There's some other good ones, Hase and Kensuke Sasaki. There's a bunch of good ones. Them against Vader and Bam Bam Bigelow. There's so many, and you go back and you watch them, there's nothing like this in wrestling today.
No, absolutely nothing.
They stand out even more today than they did then, because not only are they kicking ass, I said this, Mike Sempervive and I were talking about it on Twitter. When they came out, they got a big pop. The pops kept growing throughout the match. People would jump out of their seats for everything Scott did. Rick would hit the Steiner line. People would lose their minds. People were losing their minds for the Steiner brothers. There was nothing else like that. They're really like, imagine if Bruiser and Crusher just did high impact stuff nonstop. Like, 'cause they're ass kickers. And they literally just kick everyone's ass.
They were real, and at the same time, and they could work it, and they were safe, and they were strong enough to put you in the right place, but it was all stiff, and the people loved it. Nobody liked that today. But, once again, they're too busy doing their gymnastics and their dance routines to realize what the appeal was here. These guys looked legit and were legit, and then they did shit that people liked.
Everyone does the Hurricane Rana now. Everybody. You go back and you watch Scott Steiner do the Frankensteiner. Just send the guy to the rope, standing in the middle of the ring, and catch him with his legs. It's still like, wow, what an amazing... this is a big guy doing this. And no one stands out like that. Everyone does it. They do it off the top rope. And it's just a transition move. It's a kick out at 2. That's what it is. Scott Steiner would crush these guys. Go watch him giving Brian Knobbs the Frankensteiner at Halloween Havoc 1990. It's brutal. But anyway, next question. Couple more left. This one was sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from AJ. I used to watch Blind Date, one of the dating shows of the early 2000s. I recently searched for it on YouTube and found some episodes with wrestling developmental talent from that time. Maven and Jackie Gata, among others.
Lord.
I think they said they were wrestling in Louisville. Were you involved with choosing the wrestlers, who they were matched with, where they went on the dates? Do you know of any wrestler management fallout because of this? And did any of them go further than one date on the show?
Well, Jackie was here. Maven wrestled in OVW on a couple of occasions, but I think Maven was in Cincinnati with Les Thatcher at the time. Was he not?
I don't recall. I don't know.
He may have been, because Maven didn't spend a ton of time in OVW. And now that question has been asked, I seem to remember them being on the show, because Blind Date was on our station. WBKI here in Louisville that OVW was on. And you'd see the spots all the time. And I think that was something that the WWE arranged, or F in those days, whatever they were. They arranged that, and because Jackie and Maven were tough enough contestants, so they'd been on the show. I had nothing to do with it. You can't blame me. I wasn't even there. No, I had absolutely nothing to do with it. And the last thing that I would have been doing is trying to get my guys in OVW or girls on blind date.
All right, simple enough. Our next question, sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from John Fell in Baltimore.
I knew it. He makes a triumphant return. The clumsy man.
Well, don't call
from
him
the
that.
Charm City. Well, he falls all the time. He's fell everywhere.
Well, here's John Fell's question. I saw a question like this on the Stick to Wrestling Facebook page. If you could pick 3 people from the wrestling business to have a movie made about, who would they be? I chose Christine Jarrett, Jim Londos, and Bruno Sammartino.
Well, I mean, we've talked about Bruno. Good question, John, by the way. We talked about Bruno. Should have been a great movie a long time before now, and Bruno wouldn't let them fictionalize any part of his life and like it needs it, right, with that story.
And actually it didn't. Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, you almost can't believe the true story. Londos is a good choice. Jack Pfeffer. If you want to see a movie. Or I know we're getting into dark side of the ring territory here, but they'll never do it because nobody remembers him. But can you imagine a movie about Dr. Jerry Graham?
That would be good. Yeah.
Or Dory Funk Sr. Or, just any of these. I mean, there's been 5 million really unique characters, as they say, personalities in the wrestling business. Honestly, it just depends on what territory you grew up. Dick the Bruiser, what a fucking movie. Goes, just the background that he had. Every time he get in a football program, how was it he gave his notice? Was it at Purdue on the football team when he conked one of the coaches over the head with a helmet? And then he went to Reno because that way he could fucking hang out at the casinos. He plays pro football, then he becomes a wrestler, whatever. Lou Thez. Any of those guys that from that era, from the 30s through the 70s, they had incredible, unique backstories. They had 30 or plus year careers. Being night after night in different places, but overall cumulatively. In those days when anybody like a Vern Gagne or a Dick the Bruiser or a Lou Thez, the guys that were stars from the 50s through the 70s were seen cumulatively in the United States by more people than any network television star is right now. If whether they were on network TV or not, because of the draw of the reach and the ratings of the territory television programs and the fact that they went to all the big markets in the country everywhere. So, with the way that the audience is fragmented now, those guys were more household names than fucking, Jimmy Kimmel. So I don't know. That's impossible and narrowed down. Fuck. Who would you like to see, Brian?
Like you said, it's tough to narrow down. There's so many different people. You also have to think, what would be a good movie? Like, if it's the Eddie Graham movie, it ends in a really depressing fashion.
Yeah, that's true.
So you need something that maybe has its low moments. I don't know why my mind went here, but I was thinking Orville Brown would be an interesting story because obviously a top professional wrestler, and then his career is just cut short. I mean, he wasn't even a young guy. I shouldn't say cut short, but his career ended prematurely with that car accident. Pfeffer is interesting, but the thing is, the Pfeffer story would be hard to tell. You know what would be interesting? Like Tony Santos. Because then you have Pfeffer in the movie as a character, and here you have this mobbed up guy who promotes his own brand of wrestling, using as his matchmaker a guy who just steals everyone's gimmicks. That could be an interesting story.
What about Strangler Lewis, the movie?
That would be good.
Where they were in on the ground floor of inventing this thing that for 100 years became one of the biggest spectator sports in America until the people running it decided they didn't want it to be that anymore. And then they made it a small little niche product.
You know, if you do him or you do Toots Mondt, you get a lot of these characters. If you do Toots Mondt, you get Pfeffer in the movie. You get Strangler Lewis in the movie. You get Vince McMahon Sr. in the movie. You get Rocca in the movie. I mean, you get all these big stars in there. Buddy Rogers, there we go.
There you go.
Who from the modern times would be a good movie?
Nobody.
No. What about Jim Cornette? There was a Jim Cornette movie. Who would you want to play Jim Cornette?
I don't know. I think I have to play the part myself, and it has to be a mini series. It can't just be a movie.
And you would play yourself at 20 years old?
Well, yeah.
30 years old?
Yeah, they just color my hair a little bit like they do to Rudy Giuliani before his press conferences. Because I look the same. Everybody says I don't age, and I'm the same weight I was now when I was 25. Actually, no, I was heavier when I was 25. I'm the same weight that I was now when I was 22.
Okay, well, everyone hears about Weasel Dooley. No one sees him. No one has seen him. There are very few pictures of him. I've seen a picture of him, but most people haven't. Who plays Weasel Dooley?
Good Lord. If Robbie Wrist was still a child actor, and one person out there who knows what Robbie Wrist looks like will probably be just blowing snot right now. But maybe Robbie Wrist.
All right, maybe Robbie Wrist.
You don't remember Robbie Wrist, do you?
From the Brady Bunch.
Oh, was he the little add-on at the end there?
Hold on, let me look up Robbie Wrist.
When they found it, was he he didn't play one of the regular Brady children, but was he the add-on at the end when they added
Cousin Oliver.
Yeah,
he was Cousin Oliver. Yeah.
There you go. Robbie Wrist would play Weasel Dooley.
What were you thinking of him from?
I was just thinking of the fucking commercial. Didn't he do the famous tuna fish commercial?
Hold on, now I'm looking up Robbie Wrist here. Acting. He was in the final 6 episodes of the Brady Bunch. He was on the Saturday morning comedy Big John, Little John. He played
Big John.
He portrayed Glendon Farrell on the David Hartman vehicle Lucas Tanner. He was on the short-lived CBS drama series Bronk. And Martin in the short-lived Sanford and Son spinoff Grady. Ted Baxter's son David on Mary Tyler Moore. 3 episodes of The Bionic Woman. He also played Booger in the failed Revenge of the Nerds TV pilot. And then he has other accolades here, the likes of which we will not be reading on the show here today.
So I hope that answers your question. You know what? Nobody remembers, Brian. Nobody remembers these days what Robbie Wrist looks like. And I know how that we could have prevented such a sad, sad thing from occurring.
How's that?
Well, if we had just gotten everybody a skylight frame, then we could send everybody a picture of Robbie Wrist and they would know what he looks like. Have you heard about the skylight frame?
I love skylight frame. I have one up here right outside my office. So every time I come up the stairs to the executive floor, I see the smiling faces of my family and Swami on there all the time.
That's right. And folks, you can do the same thing. We've talked about these in the past. They're back with us now here on the podcast, the skylight frame. This thing is a freak of nature. It's not just a frame that you put one picture in. It's a touchscreen photo frame that you or anybody else can email photos to, and they pop up, boom, in seconds. So your loved ones can see what you're up to, especially this year for the holidays. If you're not going to be able to get together, or the whole family's not going to be able to be together, you send somebody one of these, and not only you, but as I said, everybody else in the family, anybody they choose to allow to email them pictures to this frame, you can do it. Whether it's family, friends, pets, places, whatever. They've come to this. It's a 10-inch touch screen. You can swipe through the pictures with your finger. You can do the slideshow. You can thank the person who sent the picture, so it's interactive. And it holds, I don't know how many thousands or millions or pictures or whatever. You know, it's the internet, for heaven's sake. You can get one of these things, load it, preload it with all of the person's favorite pictures that you're sending it to and make a personalized gift. You can import pictures of you and your significant other, spouse, grandparent, relative, whatever, and then send them around. But it's insane. Well, you know as well as anybody does, Brian, because you know how to work this stuff. But it's also easy for the mothers and fathers and older people in the audience. It's not brain surgery here. So anyway, if you go to skylightframe.com, that's SKYLIGHT, skylightframe.com, and enter the code DRIVE, DRIVE, you get $10 off your purchase of a skylight frame. $10 off, skylightframe.com, with the promo code DRIVE, and all kinds of pictures. Can you imagine back in the 80s when I was on the road, if this was a thing back then where I could get a frame and anybody that I asked could send me pictures of themselves that would pop up on that frame? My God, if I'd have been pulled over and a policeman had seen that, I would have gone to prison for 20 years.
What are you saying?
I'm saying you can send any kind of pictures. And I would have been tipping people off to send me pictures to that skylight frame. Skylightframe.com, promo code DRIVE. You can send all kinds of pictures to your loved ones, or pictures of your loved ones, or anything else for that matter.
It's a wonderful gift for the holidays. I got one for my father for Father's Day.
Use your own imagination out there, people, of what you could do with a fine product like this.
You can send wonderful pictures to family members who can't be with you all the time. Maybe they're in a different part of the country.
Yeah, you can send family pictures, friend pictures. You can send dick pictures, pictures of my cousin Dick, my other cousin Larry.
All right, let's... Skylight Frames, a great sponsor of the show. I love
fine people.
I literally got my dad one for Father's Day. He loves it because I have the app. I could just put pictures from my phone right into the app, and it pops up down there in Florida. And he loves it. He loves being able to see. Is he
still living down in Del Boca Vista?
Del Boca Vista, that's right.
I heard he got it sideways with the homeowners association down there.
All right. Well, someone likes their Seinfeld.
Is it time for our watch-along?
Well, Jim, before we get to this match, and so everyone can start setting things up, of course, Starrcade 85 on the WWE Network under the in-ring section. Go to WCW Pay-Per-Views, 1985, Starrcade. And this is Tully Blanchard versus Magnum T.A. for the U.S. title in a steel cage. I quit match rules. What would you like to say leading into this match?
Well, I said before we went on the air, I'm not going to give the whole build up to this. You can watch the shows on the network, the Saturday night shows, a lot of the syndication. You can see how the build went for this. But basically, the reason why I wanted to watch it, not only because it's Thanksgiving anniversary, but because we had the I Quit matches here lately where, you can't kill the guy and he'd be dead because then he can't lose the match because he's not conscious to say I quit. And just these ridiculous extrapolations of loopholes that just because it's not written down doesn't mean it's not a rule. Yeah, in the I Quit match, the guy would lose if he was unconscious, but it's a work. So the whole idea of this match was two grown adult men that had not only a fight over the U.S. title, but a personal issue, a hatred, an animosity for each other, that the people believed they hated each other. And they finally had to settle it man on man, where the most demeaning, most humiliating thing that could happen to one of these guys was for the other one to force them to say, I quit, on the ring microphone in front of a huge audience. And they're going to have a fight like two guys that hate each other that are trying to make each other say, I quit. And just so you can watch the build up, and they'd been feuding over the belt and et cetera, et cetera. But that's the premise of the match. It had gone this far that this was the ultimate blow off. And also remember going into this that Magnum, this was November 1985. He'd only been in the business 3.5 years. He had been pushed fairly quickly because of his look and his build and his ability. But he was still, even though he was on top at this point, being used in a main event position, he had so much further to go and would have gotten so much better. And unfortunately, it was 11 months after this, the car wreck, October of 86. And people look back, and because they remember the name, and he was figured in Mid-South. You know, we had the program with him in Wrestling 2. He was already tag team champion in 84, and then he became a singles champion. So he'd been pushed and used, and he had a really bright future and had come a long way already. But Tully is the captain of this ship because Tully's the guy that was the veteran. He was the experienced one. So they obviously, this wasn't called as people think of matches today, where every move is laid out ahead of time. But you had Tully in the ring calling things, or just saying come back or sell or stop or go or whatever. But it was a lot of ad lib and extrapolation, as most matches were in those days. Real quick, the rest of the card: Starrcade 85, the third Starrcade. This was the first one that was done simultaneously in both the Omni in Atlanta and the Greensboro Coliseum. And that worked for a couple years. As long as you didn't take it away from Greensboro and had other matches in the Omni, it made it bigger. So real briefly, the matches in the Omni, and there's a couple of these that, you know, were warm-up matches, obviously, and didn't make the main telecast. But the deal they did was, this was closed circuit. This was before pay-per-view. They'd have a match in Greensboro, and you'd see that on the screen in the Omni. Then they'd have a match in the Omni, and you'd see that on the screen in Greensboro, and they alternated all night. So in Atlanta, Thunderfoot, which I believe was Joel Deaton, beat the Italian Stallion. Pez Whatley beat Mike Graham. Manny Fernandez beat Abdullah the Butcher in the Mexican death match that later Manny claimed was supposed to be the main event of Starrcade 85, but Dusty got egotistical and put him and Flair on last. Anyway, superstar Billy Graham beat the Barbarian in an arm wrestling contest, and then beat the Barbarian in a wrestling match by disqualification. Ole and Arn Anderson beat Wahoo McDaniel and Billy Jack Haynes. Jimmy Valiant and Miss Atlanta Lively beat the Midnight Express in a street fight. And of course, Miss Atlanta Lively was Ron Garvin. Watch the build up on that one too. Maybe some of you can explain it to me, but in all honesty, Dusty wanted us to be in a feature match on Starrcade, and it didn't mean we had to go over, because he knew that we could, you know, have a good gimmick match, especially being from Tennessee, and do a job there, and it wasn't going to hurt us in the long run because we're fixing to go with the rock and roll. Jimmy Valiant, as one of his street people, had brought in Miss Atlanta Lively, who was Ronnie Garvin in drag, and goddamn it, we still had a bloody street fight, but with Ronnie Garvin dressed as a woman. He did such a good job of it. The first day they did it on Atlanta TV, Barbarian saw Ronnie dressed up from across the fucking locker room area we used at TBS. He's like, ooh, who's the new girl? So that would have been interesting if nobody had told Barb. Anyway, and then the main event in Atlanta was Dusty Rhodes beating Ric Flair by disqualification in the NWA title match. In Greensboro, they saw Denny Brown beat Rocky King, Don Kernodle beat Tommy Lane, and then on the show, Crusher Khrushchev beat Sam Houston. It was the tournament final for the NWA Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight title. Ron Bass beat Black Bart in a bull rope match, which they had been partners. J.J. Dillon then beat Ron Bass in a bull rope match. J.J. had been their manager, blah, blah, blah. Buddy Landell beat Terry Taylor to win the NWA national title. As you can see, Greensboro got a little bit stronger card. Magnum and Tully in the I Quit match. And then the Rock and Roll Express in the NWA World Tag title match against Ivan and Nikita Koloff. And the Rock and Roll went over in it was a double cage match on top. Another cage match, no time limit, no disqualification. That's the card, and just some business metrics real quick. It sold out the Greensboro Coliseum. 16,000 people paid $307,000. The Omni drew a little bit over 15,000 people, and the house was $285,000. And this was not as big as Starrcade 86 with the closed circuit locations. Starrcade 86, they did more closed circuit locations, and even in Kansas City, etc. And it watered a few of them down somewhat. But on this one, Charlotte did $70,000, Norfolk did $44,700, Spartanburg, South Carolina did $54,000 in Spartanburg to watch the show on a big screen. Roanoke did $25,000, And in the Superdome in New Orleans, they did $100,000, $98,000. But Watts did a co-promotion and had the major matches on the big screen, but had several matches of his own there live from Mid-South, or UWF by that time. Did he not?
Yeah, Nick Patrick beat Tommy Wright. Butch Reed and Nick Patrick beat Dick Slater and Buzz Sawyer via disqualification. And Jake Roberts beat Lord Humongous via DQ.
But basically, all in all, the gross for everything I just mentioned was about $880,000, which at the time would have been the biggest, until Starrcade 86, the biggest one-night gross for an NWA event. And the most important things, on Thanksgiving night, over 60,000 fans left their homes on Thanksgiving to go to some venue, whether live or closed circuit, and see this event in some form or fashion. That ain't bad. But anyway, that's the business of all of this. And this is the enduring match from this show, don't you think?
Without question.
Without question. You know, in some of the big shows in that era, the case can be made for a different match or two. But on this one, this is the one that everybody remembers. So, tell them how to do this thing, funky white boy.
You want to go on the WWE Network to Starrcade 85. Once again, it's under In-Ring. You will scroll down to WCW pay-per-view events. You can look under Starrcade and go to 1985, or you can look under 1985 and go to Starrcade. It's the only option for 1985 under WCW pay-per-views.
And it's not even really a pay-per-view, because there was no pay-per-view at the time.
They don't know how to classify it otherwise.
Closed circuit gets its own category.
You want to go to 1 hour, 27 minutes, and 34 seconds into Starrcade 85. An easy option is the Jump To option underneath the video, and you'll see the video listed as Tully Blanchard versus Magnum T.A. U.S. title. Once again, 1 hour, 27 minutes, 34 seconds into Starrcade 85.
And we're going to be talking over this, but put the crowd down a little bit behind you so you can hear these people go berserk at various points.
Jim, are you ready on your end?
I am ready. Now, once again, it's 1, 2, 3, go, no, don't go. How do you do this?
We're going to count down from 5, and then I'm going to say, press play now, and you should press play on the word now. When I say now,
on the word now,
towards the W end of now, press play. Are you ready?
NASA does it the same way. I'm ready.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, press play now.
And you see the graphic, and I did it on the down of the W.
Thank you very much.
Jim Crockett had wonderful graphics back then. That was all done in the Nemo truck. Anyway, you see this is a big show because they sprung for the fog and the fog machine and the dry ice effect for the big intro. And look at the fucking fake police light up there going around. Tully and Baby Doll, the perfect 10. Doll had heat, and so did Tully, because Doll was bigger than Tully was. And, you know, you see Tully's game face on. This is when he was young, he could move, he could go. He was legitimately 5'10", 215. And they'd add a few pounds to it when he was introduced, because back then you expected larger guys. But Tully's whole thing was he was always constant motion. He was very aggressive, and he worked a style that worked for him, that made sense for him when he was in with bigger guys. Ring announcer Tom Miller from Greensboro, and is that, yes, it is indeed, Earl Hebner will be the referee. Magnum just looked like $1 million. The only thing he couldn't do naturally on television was smile. He could smile in person, but he wasn't a smiley person on TV. If he had had more time to bring more of that out of him, you know, but he was always very dour on television. Tom Miller had been the ring announcer in Greensboro since certainly the 70s, maybe the 60s. The most ineffectual comb over in wrestling history. Do you miss just a regular cyclone fence cage too, Brian, instead of these goddamn giant 5,000-pound apparatuses that take weeks to weld and build?
I miss a lot of the simplicity of wrestling back then because it just worked, and you could feel the intensity on both of these guys. You know, no one's playing to the crowd, no one's jumping up and down. You could feel it.
Well, the cage like that worked because it's okay if you had two guys that were going to have a fight and you want to put them in a cage to make sure nobody can get in or out. That's the kind of cage you'd build if you weren't doing it for a television production, but just to settle the issue. That's what it started with the WWF. That's what I told Vince one time about when I had the issue with Kevin Dunn. I said, everywhere else I've ever been, you shot the TV around the wrestling. Now you shoot the wrestling around the TV. Anyway, Tommy Young was a better ring mic worker for I Quit matches than Baby Earl there. But still, the point is also we've lost the guys saying I quit on the ring microphone so everybody can hear it that's in the arena. That's the ultimate humiliation, is it not? And most times they don't even use the microphone anymore. Anyway, Tully has that feisty bulldogishness to him. You saw he just got nailed and put down on his ass, and he pops back up like he's indignant that happened, but he's going to keep coming back. And of course, Magnum, especially early on, he's going to show Magnum stronger and bigger, but Tully's going to be tenacious.
Now, Magnum had only been there for less than a year because, of course, he had been the North American champion in Mid-South Wrestling towards the end of 1984. And like so many of the other stars from 1984 in Mid-South, he comes in, Midnight Express, Terry Taylor, Buddy Landel, Rock and Roll Express, and Magnum quickly got skyrocketed. He beat Wahoo for the U.S. title, then lost it to Tully, and then, of course, this match here got set up with that.
Well, Dusty was going to do with Magnum what he always did with Barry Windham. Make him the matinee idol babyface, the number 2 guy behind Dusty himself. And it just that Wyndham's timing, he had left on the push and gone to, look at this exchange, by the way. Look at it. And you see Tully backing up, and it takes a knee. It's a steady, gradual thing where he doesn't just take a big bump from the first shot, but Magnum's wearing him down and is rocking him with those things. Where I was going with that was it just so happened that Barry's timing was horrible there because the 85-86 run would have been the biggest of his career if he'd have been in this spot. And he was a better worker than Magnum, but Magnum had more determination than Barry. You know, Barry slacked off on a number of big spots. Magnum was determined. He was always going to get better. And let's see, Tully just, he stays on a guy. He's a little fucking, as Arn used to call him, a wombat. But God, he's the prick quarterback. He's not the big fucking lineman. He was the prick fucking college quarterback on a football team. That son of a fucking local wrestling legend. Got a lot of shit handed to him. It didn't mean he didn't have a work ethic, but that's the personality that he gave off. Anyway, they've already started using the cage, and as a matter of fact, Magnum just got fucking thrown into the cage, and he's bleeding.
He did it as he was rolling around. Did you see that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the way he did it. And the reason why he's not bleeding better is because Magnum was not yet really a veteran at doing that, or he would have been able to get a little better his first go-round. Tully's probably letting him know that he's a little short. But, yeah, you didn't have time to waste and lay there. I mean, Ray Stevens would take that upside down bump in the turnbuckle and he'd hit his head on the post and he'd blade on his way back, flipping back into the ring. Just that quick. That's because the guys were used to it back then. Now it's a major procedure and everybody has to cover up everything. And anyway, boom. But Tully has been on Magnum, but look, Magnum still keeps firing back. And the momentum changes back again. So now even though that Magnum might be bleeding a little bit, now he's got Tully where he wants him. It's another thing the cage matches are missing. If you've got metal, steel surrounding the entire ring and you're throwing each other into it, somebody should get busted open. It's these guys, they'd rather do these dives where everybody could be fractured and paralyzed and go to the hospital for surgery instead of use a blade. Somehow that's horrendous to everybody's safety. Boom! Tully once again creates an opening for himself, uses the cage, desperation move to get Magnum put down, where he's probably going to the well again, make sure we can get a little bit more blood. But nobody is worried about what move they're going to do here that's going to be impressive, because they're too much worried about having a fight that people are going to believe is the culmination of this months-long blood feud that they've had, where both have done horrible things to each other.
Yeah, nothing feels pre-planned. Nothing feels choreographed. It feels in the moment.
Well, yeah, and that's because most of it wasn't, because, as I said, Tully is the captain of the ship here, and he's not telling Maggie a lot of times what to do as far as exactly what to do, but he's just telling him, come back, or I'm going to stop you, or whatever, just the flow of the thing. I think Tully should be any second here now. I don't think Magnum threw him head first to the cage there, but he looks like he might have his sword in hand. Is Tully bleeding yet? Baby doll is shocked. Yes, Tully's bleeding. And he just gave Doll his blade. And nobody saw that until I just pointed it out, because you're not looking. You didn't know what you were looking for. Or I thought he gave it to Doll there. He may have fucking put it in Magnum's trunks. See, I haven't seen this match in 20 years. One way or another, boom, the point is, look at these shots. They're taking time to throw shit and say, oh, well, that's what it was. Tully, he got it on his arm because he had gone arm first into the cage. They're taking time to make what they're doing to each other look like something and look like a struggle, rather than worrying about running through this at a high rate of speed. I don't know. You don't see anybody actually trying to have a conflict like this anymore. And it's so different. It's almost like a completely different product.
You were right about Tully. Constant motion.
Yeah, because as a smaller guy, he had to be. He had to be more aggressive, and he had to be the fucking little pit bull that would wear you down. And, the body language, where you look, you can see he'll throw a kick, but then he'll sell himself. This looks like a war of attrition with the body language that they're using, where this shit hurts and it's taking a toll on them. Look at the facials. Can you imagine Johnny Gargano? Now, yeah, Tully trying to make it say it. Say I quit. Say I quit. Can you imagine Johnny Gargano making those faces? And look at those shots.
And those are great because you can hear them. Every time he hits them with the mic, the whole building hears it.
Because the microphone's on. And he, browbeating him, screaming at him, up in his face. And you can see, look at those punches. Boom. The visual here backs up what they're trying to accomplish. There's no buzz killer to take you out of the moment. Tully's arm's bleeding. Fucking Magnum's head is bleeding. He's just drilling him. And he goes for the cover out of fucking force of habit, and the referee doesn't go for the count. That's just that little thing that shows the people in the arena, oh, that's right. One of them's got to quit. They can't be pinned.
Is Earl doing the right thing here? Should he be doing more? Should he be doing less?
Well, no.
Can't do much less. Yeah.
You can't do much less, but he's not supposed to do any more because the idea is there are no rules. Tommy Young would have been probably making better facials, a little more Marcel Marceau, but because remember, Earl was young here. This is 35 years ago. He's kind of a green referee at that point. Tommy, I believe, was in, because Dusty and Rick were in Atlanta, so Tommy was in the Omni. But see, Tully's getting the heat on Magnum. And by getting the heat on Magnum, Magnum is selling. This is the heat portion of the match, where the heel kicks the shit out of the babyface. He gets the heat on him, and gives the people the impression that the babyface is in trouble and all hope is lost. And, Tully came off the top rope a minute ago with a elbow or a double sledge or whatever, and he's hitting these elbows that are stiff. But this is high impact shit that people can identify with instead of a lot of wrestling moves. People can, they're fucking punching and kicking and dropping on each other. This is a fight. It looks animalistic. And look at Magnum crawl on his knees. And the thing now is everybody's showing the effects. But now remember what Tully was doing a second ago. Now Magnum gets the opportunity. This is a babyface comeback, but not in the traditional shoot you off, backdrop, drop kick kind of way. The worm has turned. Now the babyface is getting his chance to get even with this guy. And he's doing the same thing. Come on, motherfucker. Give up. Say I quit. And just this, they're not taking just normal bumps like they teach in wrestling school. They're dropping. They're fucking staggered. There's a lot of grunting and groaning going. We're listening to it with sound all the way off so we can hear each other. But there's a lot of grunting and groaning and spitting about going on as they try to rip at each other, as I recall here. And look at this and shit just fucking... They're just throttling each other. And the people were going nuts because it was a fight between two people. He's going for his eye. A fight between two people. They'd been seeing this for months. They wanted to know what was going to happen. They didn't come to see a 4-star gymnastics performance. They came to see Magnum get even and make this motherfucker give up. I will say Crockett's crew outdid themselves on the camera work here that was usually really stinky on these big events, but they didn't do too bad on this one.
Oh, they did great here, especially, as the match goes on, you'll see later on, great camera work.
They probably knew if they hadn't got all of this one, Dusty would have been pissed. And look, Magnum just looks like as he's going into it, just looks like a fucking, he looked like who Magnum T.A. was supposed to be. This fucking babyface kick-ass guy that rode a motorcycle. And you can see Tully tell Magnum fire up there a little bit. That's the thing when guys called matches, they might call the move right as they're shooting somebody off, duck it, crossbody or whatever. But a good heel knew how to call a match where the babyface would come back, but not too much. Or then he'd get stopped and he'd sell, but he'd say, don't die. Stay with it. So the babyface would fire back and the heel would have to stop him again. It was controlling the tempo. And look at this and just shoving it in his fucking face after he'd been hitting him with it. But that's the thing. The good heel would control a tempo and bring you on those. That's what Flair was a master at, the peaks and the valleys. He wouldn't be telling his opponent exactly what foot to put in front of another. He would just keep coming. Come on, come on, come on, or back up or stop or whatever the fuck. Look, there's a nice cross section of Americana in the building. Young girls, older people. Where'd they all go? I forgot they don't watch this phony shit anymore. Fuck you, Earl.
Such great intensity. That's what you don't see in wrestling anymore. And there comes the chair. There you go.
As we threw the referee down and Dahl throws in the chair. And it's a wooden chair, one of those Klondike Bill specials. Because if it was a metal chair, he couldn't get a fucking spike. And now this is when everybody remembers really fucking the intensity in the building, especially picking up, because they're like, okay, they've gone too far. Somebody's lost it here. He's going for his eye. It is very disturbingly close. I forgot how close they got. But look, Magnum's coming back. And if we had the sound up, you would hear people starting to register. Wait a minute. Oh, my God, Magnum, yes. And it's a slow fight from underneath. I got to get it. And now, when Magnum sees the fucking gimmick, and now, cocksucker, as Brute Bernard used to say, cocksucker, and there's Tully with his right hand, getting a little extra sauce for the, what is it? That's one of the slats that's been fucking ripped out of the chair, and he's, basically the referee was saying, do you quit? Do you quit? And Tully said, as we famously remember, there's Klondike Bill, by the way, one of my favorite people in all the world. And Tully didn't say, I quit. He said, yes, 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 right? So it gave him an out, but he still quit. And now look at him selling the fucking damage to his face and his eye. And Magnum just walks off like, fuck you. Did they hug and kiss and thank each other for the match? And shake hands and hold each other's hand up, Brian? Did you see that? I didn't see that.
Certainly not. Well, Baby Doll never did a Elizabeth impression like she's doing here tonight.
And Magnum walked off from him like he was a piece of shit, because that's the whole idea of the goddamn thing.
Look at that replay. Blood shooting down his face as Magnum sticks the spike into his forehead.
And Tully sticks the blade into his. And, you know, and there's people that still to this day go, oh, that's so barbaric. They bladed each other. Oh, my God. The fucking, what was it, 2 years ago or 3 years ago? Randy Orton laid there and let Brock Lesnar elbow him open for a shoot. That big beast with shoot elbows. Fuck, give me the blade and get out of my way before I'll lay there for that. Or, as we've mentioned, for any of these other dives off the roof that these guys are going to the hospital and being operated on and being put in casts for months at a time. They'd rather do that, and that's fine, but get a little color? Christ. Anyway, do you think, Brian, show people what you can do when you have two grown men who know what they're doing, trying to simulate a fight, and with the violence and the intensity, and it doesn't have to be gymnastics, and it doesn't have to be constant motion if it means something, and big point here, the people care going in about who's in the match to begin with. If they care about you, then you've got them. If they don't care about you going in, then all the hoop-de-doo in the world won't change that in one match.
You know, we often talk about matches. Do they hold up? That certainly holds up, but more than that, it stands out even more today than it did then, obviously, because you don't see intensity. Even when you see a match that people rave about, guys never look as exhausted as they just looked in that match. They don't sell every little thing the way they just did in that match. You know, that match holds up. That match stands out to this day. And I still got this thing running right now. Who's the referee in your tag team match here?
Well, I'll tell you here in a second, because I don't really know. I didn't have mine running. I stopped mine. Wait a minute. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. Just who was the referee? Give me a shot of the referee. Now I'm buffering. It's a slow developing. Oh my God, that. Boy, he's greener than a pepper tree. I'm trying to remember it. Bobby takes a big hip toss out on the concrete or actually a flying Beal from Handsome Jimmy. That was a kid that was refereeing down in the Georgia end. Maybe his name, I can't remember his name, but he didn't last long, and boy, you can tell he's green just because he's lost. He don't know what to do. And by the way, this was Street Fight there, just a little comment. Dennis Condrey had the idea to do the tuxedos. Bobby and Dennis and I all came out in tuxedos for a street fight, which they knew was going to get bloody and ripped off, but that was the idea. Just that was our first big show there, and instead of just doing what everybody else did, we'd come in and Dennis has a white tuxedo on, Bobby's is black. I think mine was, I can't remember, powder blue or something over there. Yes, anyway, just to show what snide heels we were, and then, of course, they all got ripped off and bloody and everything. But that's another story for another time.
You know, one other point, because you brought up the fact that they did almost $100,000 at the Superdome. And we listed the 3 matches Bill Watts had. Nothing really that stands out. I mean,
Yeah.
nothing to take away from Slater and Sawyer and Butch Reed and Jake and Humongous, but it was 3 matches. Nick Patrick wrestling twice. But a big part of it is the fact that all of those Mid-South stars were going to be seen on that event. The people who were in that Superdome a year earlier to see the Midnight Express and the Rock and Roll Express, they were going to see both them. They were going to see Terry Taylor, who had been champion there a year earlier. Magnum T.A., champion there a year earlier. Buddy Landell, one of the top heels there a year earlier. All these stars of 1984, early 85 Mid-South.
The Thanksgiving 1984 Superdome, the main event was the Rock and Roll and Midnight and the Scaffold. So we had pretty much their top 2 or 3 matches from that period. Well, there you go. And with
that, the drive-thru is closed. We get the deluxe kalimba. Wow, it actually ended on the right note for once. Well, with that...
Can you end us on any note? I've got pizza.
We're going to try, you and your crappy Louisville pizza. But anyway, the Jim Cornette Experience debuts it's Saturday this week, correct?
Yes.
Saturday, wherever you find your favorite podcast, and we'll be back. Are we doing Tuesday? I'm totally messed up with the schedule.
Oh, for God's sake.
When are we back?
Listen to everything we do. Here's the thing. This week's Thanksgiving, so we're going to record on Friday. It's going to air on Saturday of Thanksgiving weekend. And then the next week's drive-thru will still air on Monday. Right?
I don't know. I guess so.
I think that's probably a pretty safe bet. They know where to find us. If they've made it this long, they know where to find us. They know what I've got on sale. They know about the Patreon. They know about the YouTube. Just say goodnight.
With that, until Saturday on The Experience, and next week, whatever day it may be, right back here on the drive-thru. For Jim Cornette, I'm the great Brian Last. Tally-ho!